You know, and she is someone she teaches at the city university, she teaches in city university and in the public schools. So she has a very interesting background. But I said, I want this to be more powerful than, than just I just don't want it to be dry, if that makes any sense. Okay, so thank you for being so understanding. And okay, yeah, just call me because I'll be at break at 6:29. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you, sweetie. I appreciate you. I appreciate you. Okay, now I'm just trying to work with you. I just know what can make people get more engaged.
However, do you know the name of the man who is believed to be the creator of the American Army? Baron Frederick von Steuben. 3 years into the war, Benjamin Franklin recommended von Steuben to Washington due to his military experience with the Prussian military. Franklin also downplayed the rumors that von Steuben...
Well, absolutely. And you want people to... I want people to respond, and just knowing black people are denied the opportunity to go to college, which fuels a lot of what we're doing, right? But what we're doing is we're shooting ourselves in the foot. It's like, wait. What we're doing is missing, just like cooking. It's just like, y'all missing everything. You're missing everything. You're missing everything. You're missing the big picture here. Where your gifts are. My girlfriend who could do hair. I told you. I was like, we're missing an opportunity here. So, okay, well, let me go on because I've got to get up in like 4 minutes.
If you, a family member or a loved one has...
Oh, hold on, honey. I'll be there, but I promise you I won't go off. That's not true. Ain't that awful? You want me to be a stone cold nut. Ain't that awful? You're awful. Awful. Like, oh yeah, I was listening to you today. I'm like, yeah. Whenever someone says that to me, I must have said something that made them go, ooh, she's nuts. I'm like,
we'll give you a free pair of diabetic socks.
Like,
special gift to you, regardless of your age.
Yeah, I mean, just
diabetes and have insurance.
I don't want people to be clowns, and that's what I see happening with us, with the trades. I'm like, we're missing something here, and it's big what we're missing. So I'm gonna jump off of here because I got to go do a sound check. All right, sweetie, thank you so much. Here. Okay, bye-bye. Okay, great.
We have 3 minutes and I have Pastor Brooks on.
Hold on. Do we have the pastor up?
He's on, yes.
Okay, let me say hello to him, because I think, let me make sure that I've gone.
By making a tax-deductible donation of your
I've gone live, yep.
Or almost anything with wheels.
I did go live.
The National Federation
okay.
of the Blind. Your donation will help ensure a brighter future for blind children and adults.
Okay, Darius?
659-9314.
Yeah. Hey, hon, we're just doing the sound check, okay?
9314. Or visit cars.
Okay, I need you to say something so we can hear you.
We will arrange to have the donated vehicle picked up and provide you with a tax-deductible.
I can hear the pastor.
Okay, perfect. Pastor Brooks, thank you so much for being with us today.
I'm always honored.
Always, Dr. Brooks.
I am very pleased to be joined by State Representative Margaret Croak.
I wish that in America we cared about both of pregnant persons and we cared about...
Okay, hey everybody, how you doing today? How you doing? Good to see you.
America
Pull
is
this
going
down.
in the wrong direction when it comes to maternal mortality. We have one of the
I'll
highest
put my
rates in a developed country. It's
bracelet back on. We are ready for the world. How about that? Okay.
You have 30 seconds.
Thank you so much. Let's have a great show, and I know that we will. With your guidance, Mr. Castaneda, everybody, let's get right to it.
Yes, you're right, but when you look at what we pay out of pocket
for
that kind of stuff.
10 seconds.
Okay. Get this light here. All right.
Stand by.
All right.
20.
Let's have a great one.
Progressive talk, where facts matter.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. Yes, we can. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. It's Thursday, April 27, 2023. It's a joy to be with you today, coming to you from the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, WCPT 820 here in Chicago, and AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota, getting just a little bit of feedback. And, of course, the Santita Jackson and Friends page. That's where my morning stars are, and they're also on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Meet Andre and Robert and Dave and Daryl, and Raphael, hey, and Kenneth. And so many of them are over there. That's right. Hey, Barbara Bacon, representing from Oak Park. I love you and Joyce. I love all of you. Everybody, like and share, like and share. Call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. It was wonderful, shall I say, hearing from so many of you yesterday. I want you to call me. I really want to hear more from you. And let's talk about President Biden's age. That's become an issue. Become an issue. Is it his age, though, or is it the appearance of maybe having challenged health? Because it seems that the leading lights for the presidency, Elizabeth Warren is in her 70s. We look at Maxine Waters. She's in her 80s. She's at the gym right now, everybody. Bernie Sanders. Hey, we're not asking about their ages because they look to be healthy. Or is it just age? Are we being ageist, or is it something else? I want you to call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. Joyce, you say I'm a fashionista killing it. That's because you like this denim jacket, don't you? And this crazy bracelet and the ring. Yeah, if you're not watching, you don't see everybody. That's right. Go to the Santita Jackson and Friends Facebook page. And indeed, that's where I really want you to become my friend. The Santita Jackson page, they're kicking people off. That's not my fault. That's Facebook's policy, but I opened up a fan page, and that's on the fan pages where we can all engage. And so I've just moved my activity over to Santita Jackson and Friends. And meet me on Twitter at Santita J. Joyce, are you on Twitter? Barbara, Daryl, Gloria, hey, are you all on Twitter? If you are, please become my friend on Twitter at Santita J. So let's get right to it. And then, of course, we're going to have Congressman Jonathan Jackson on to talk about what's happening with the debt ceiling. And Dr. Max Wolf will be weighing in, as will Attorney Robert Patillo. What about the debt ceiling? What is being cut? When Congressman Jackson was on earlier this week, he said, everything's on the table. The cuts to the poor, the cuts to working people will be incredible. You need to be involved. So let's talk about this today on the Santita Jackson Show. Call me, text me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. I want to know what your thoughts are about President Biden and his age. We are in 2024, everybody. Yeah, we're here. We're right here. And so now people are talking about that. They're beginning to take the candidates and the candidacies apart. Even Donald Trump is deep into his 70s. But no one's talking about his age. But everyone's talking about President Biden's age. What do you think about that? Call me at 773-763-9278. You know, we've been having these panels, health panel here at WCPT, and we're going to have a labor panel. I'm very excited to be welcoming Jamila Muhammad onto the show tomorrow and on Monday. Indeed, she's helping us to see, as are the people on the labor panel, just how you get into the labor force. I mean, the academic track is not the only track there is. You can come right out of high school making a high five-figure, even a six-figure income if you are trained, if you have that kind of education. So we got to talk about that, and we're going to have Smart Locals 265, Chicago Federation of Labor, the Roofers, Local 11, Cisco, Powering Chicago, Megant Financial. It's going to be, and I'm going to be working with Megant Financial because what I like about them is that they look for people in the working class, they even look for poor people to give them financial advice. You think that only the high net worth individuals, only wealthy individuals can get a financial advisor. No, that's what they focus on, and that's why I like them so much. And, so please. Of course, next Thursday, May 4th, 4 to 6 p.m., you don't want to miss this labor panel. So let's get right to it, everybody. Let's get right to it. We've got a lot going on here in the country, and so we want to look at extreme weather, a storm system that already pounded parts of the South this week with tennis ball-sized hail, is now on track to bring more dangerous weather to the region again. Portions of southern Texas, southern Louisiana, the Florida Panhandle are at risk of severe storms. We're praying for all of our brothers and sisters down there. Former President Donald Trump has lost an emergency attempt to block former Vice President Mike Pence from testifying about their direct conversations after the 2020 election. Trump has repeatedly tried, according to this CNN report, and failed to close off some answers from witnesses close to him in the special counsel investigation. This latest order from the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals, that's as high as you go before you get to the Supreme Court, everybody, likely will usher in Pence's grand jury testimony quickly, an unprecedented development. A transgender lawmaker in Montana was banned from the state's Republican-dominated House chamber this week after sparking protest over LGBTQ plus rights. Representative Zoe Zephyr, a 34-year-old Democrat, previously said GOP lawmakers would have blood on their hands, as she stated, for passing bills restricting gender care for minors. Speaker of that House, backed by a Republican supermajority, ruled that her comments violated House rules and refused to recognize her to speak until she apologized. Sounds like Tennessee again, huh? Yeah. The U.S. House of Representatives on Wednesday voted to pass the GOP plan to raise the nation's debt ceiling. We'll be talking about that with Congressman Jonathan Jackson, Dr. Max Wolf, with Attorney Robert Patillo. A whole lot, if they have their way, will get cut, and that means you. So we're going to be talking about that. The final vote was razor thin, 217 to 215, with 4 Republicans voting against the bill. Ken Buck of Colorado, Andy Biggs of Arizona, Tim Burchett of Tennessee, and Matt Gaetz of Florida. So we will see how all of this goes, everybody. In Chicago, we'll have a high of 47 degrees. It will be sunny. It's already a beautiful day. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 57 degrees, mostly sunny. All right, who's going to get that Stanley Cup? Who's going to get the NBA championship ring? Oh, I saw the NBA championship ring last year. The owner of the Bucks, I've got to get her on the show. It's like the biggest ring ever. Oh my gosh, who's going to get it? Well, Denver won their series 4-1. The Nuggets won 12 over the Timberwolves 109. Better luck next year, my Minnesota Timberwolves. The Hawks won 19. The Celtics won 17. Tight series. The Celtics lead it though 3-2. The Suns, well, they won their series over the Clippers 136-30. Tonight we'll be seeing the Knicks and the Cavaliers, the Lakers and the Grizzlies, the Heat and the Bucks, and the Warriors versus the Kings. In the NHL, the Islanders 3, the Hurricanes 2. The Stars 4, they're leading their series 3-2. They shut out the Wild 4-0. The Oilers 6, the Kings 3. The Kings lead that series 3-2. In Major League Baseball, the Twins 6, the Yankees 2. The Blue Jays 7, the White Sox got shut out last night. And the Cubs 6. The Padres, nothing. All right, everybody. So we got a lot going on, a lot going on. So everybody, let's get right to it. We've got Pastor Darius Brooks, or shall I call you Dr. Darius Brooks? Boy, talk about a week. Now, of course, he's a legend in the world of music. One of the most iconic songwriter producers of the modern gospel era, of course, coming out of the Tommies under, of course, I don't think we can say enough about the Tommies down through the years and all that Reverend Milton Brunson contributed as pastor, but also the generation of songwriters and instrumentalists and vocalists and producers that he produced in the Tommies, world-renowned Tommies. Well, you and Percy Beatty done good, but now you are Dr. Darius Brooks, having gotten your honorary doctorate last week. President Biden acknowledged you last week. You've got a top 30 song on the Billboard charts. Oh, wow, what can I be? How can I just touch me? Just touch me.
Touch me, Lord Jesus.
Oh, touch me, Lord Jesus. Yes. But I tell you, there's no one more deserving, and he never stops serving. And so when the Lord called him to expand his ministry And now he is a senior pastor at Grace Central. And really, he and First Lady Deborah Brooks are just leading this congregation. One of the things that I love about your congregation is that the people there are really in need, and they see a couple working out their marriage, raising a beautiful, beautiful daughter who's the perfect combination of them, I might add, and such a lady just like her mother. And it's wonderful to see. And if people knew your whole story, they would shout, glory, 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 because it didn't start off this way for you. But I just thank God that you've been so faithful, and that you married Deborah, that she married you even as my brothers pelted you with popcorn on your first official date. When we bumped into you at the movie theater, my mother said, I'm so proud of that boy. That means he's serious. Is she such a lovely young lady? Look at her. And it's true. I love you, Pastor Brooks. Congratulations to you. Everybody send him some love. He's Dr. Darius Brooks. President Biden acknowledged him personally last week. He's got a top 30 song on the Billboard charts. He's on the cover. And so we're so excited for you, Pastor Brooks.
Well, I'm so honored. I do have the certificate, and we found behind us the presidential award another letter, and I was like, he signed this thing for real. I'm like, what the world?
Yes.
So yes. I thank the presidents of Harvest Christian College as well, and all of that whole experience. Santita, God really is amazing, and I'm not talking about from a religious perspective. I was in a store yesterday, and there was a Jewish guy and a Islamic guy in there, and they said, what religion are you? I said, you spell God, capital G-O-D. Everything else you have to differentiate, but we all drink water. 2 + 2 is 4 with a fever. At the end of the day, God's word must reach, inspire, motivate, and heal everyone. And so when we get to the place where he's not a religious God, he is a God for life, a God spiritually for the heart, to help our lives get better, to show us how to love one another, that kind of thing. So I'm honored to have this doctorate degree to do the work, because that's what it's for.
Dr. Knighton is on.
In the service in which we worked on. It's the real deal in reference of the context that it was given to me, and to be not out of high school as well. How this don't make sense, which is what the message is today. How can you not have a high school diploma? I do have my GED, and you turn around and get a doctorate degree. We're going to talk about that. Santita, I'm excited. Grace Central Church, 10216 South Kitchener Street, Westchester, Illinois. Even right now, if y'all know anybody who needs food, we feed from 5 o'clock till 7. We give $300 worth of food, chicken, ham, produce, potatoes, eggs, cheese, Jiffy Mix. We give $300 per family. Food is not just no crackers and peanut butter, from 5 till 7 every Tuesday. And then on Wednesday, we do seniors, because we don't want them out late from noon till 2. And we do this every week, come hell or hot water. Santita, I'm excited about direction today. I'm loving your program. I'm sharing it, letting everybody know you really need to go to this page. Santita, negative information is just as important as positive information. If you think education is expensive, you should try ignorance. To have both of those sitting side by side, to have the educator and the applicator sit side by side, and then somebody's able to interpret the truth, that's how you get information on your situation that brings you revelation for your elevation, so you can reach your destination with a confirmation while never losing inspiration. Somebody asked me the other day, why do you stay so upbeat when you're at peace with yourself? Any place is home. Santita, Psalms 2, 1, and 8. Great message. Is not a familiar passage, but it's very informative. Why do the heathen rage and the people imagine a vain thing? Second verse, the king of the earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against his anointed, saying, let us break their bands asunder and cast them away. Let's cut the cords from them and cut them away from us. He sits in the high heavens. He that sits in the high heavens laughs. The Lord shall have them in derision. Then shall speak unto them his wrath and vex them in sore displeasure. Yet have I set my king upon a holy hill of Zion. I will declare the decree. The Lord has said to me, thou art my son. This day have I begotten thee. Watch this, Santita. As for me, and I will give thee the heathen for thine inheritance. Santita, if I had to use for a really short thought, he didn't see fit. He didn't see fit. Santita, you cannot connect to your heart's desire based on others' theory, or even yours to this matter. T.D. Jakes said the other day he took geometry in school and never used it in the 65 years of his life. You have to seek a godly direction and godly good information. And I said godly because God is his word. And when you seek godly direction and godly good information, and once you get godly direction and good information, your situation, it's a spiritual perspective now. So you have spiritual work to do. Santita, people are always talking about think positive. You know, to kill somebody, you got to think positive. You know, to do things you know hurts you, to go back to unhealthy relationships, that's thinking positive to some people. You got to put God's word on your language. It differentiates everything. As wealthy people seek for a financial advisor, one who needs a great life must seek for a spiritual advisor. And without doing the spiritual work, there's a result to this. It's called getting nothing of substance. Santita, you know what your father and your mother taught us. Only what you do for Christ will last. Here wonderfully, yes, sir, here wonderfully, knowing God has created you and that we have a design path that he has, and it's of good, not of evil. You were created and designed to do and be your very best. I said God's creation. If you look good and you got a nice body and you get your nails done, as you. But God's creation deals with the heart. James 1 and 2 says, but ye be ye doers of the word and not just hearers. So if you're not seeing what you need to see what God's word says about how to see. If you're not seeing what you need to see, then see what God's word says about how you need to see. Your heart's desire as a believer is to simply do God's word. It becomes your opportunity system. And just FYI, you're well protected here. The opportunities that God gives, you grow here. This growth is more of a discomfort than pain. Santita, when you're growing in God, there's some things you don't want to do. I'm uncomfortable, but it ain't no pain, baby. With God's word, you produce here and you receive here and long term. I have never received anything from God that he took back. Santita, did you hear what I said? I'll be 60 years old on Sunday. With me trusting God, just trusting God my whole life, I have never received anything from God that he took back. Now, Santita, some things went back that I picked, but God didn't pick it. Mm-hmm. Not knowing God's direction and the plan for the promise he has made for you is like trying to harvest where you haven't planted. I want to say that one more time as I close. Not knowing God's direction and the plans for the promise he has for you is like trying to harvest where you haven't planted. You ever tried dating somebody and you ain't know her? You ever tried giving somebody a position of trust and you never knew nothing about her? It doesn't matter what you believe. It will not amount up to anything unless you wake up from your dream and put some real God's word on it. I'm reminded of some things we put in our thoughts. Things like the truth hurts. That's a lie. Love hurts. That's a lie. And here's another one, Santita. Nothing is impossible. Yet there are a lot of people doing nothing every day.
You know what? Let me say this to you. Because I have you and Dr. Shanina Knighton on. And Dr. Knighton, I'd like for you to stay with me just a couple more minutes so that we can, at least for about 3 minutes on the other side of the break, you can give us a word about our health today and infection prevention, because that's very, 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 very real. You know, Dr. Knighton is the first person in her family, oh my goodness, oh glory, to graduate from high school, let alone get a degree, let alone get a doctorate degree. And then I see you. You know, the circumstances in your life didn't allow you to walk the stage and get a diploma, but you got a GED. And God put people in your lives that made what seemed impossible, possible, and real. And so both of you inspire me, and you inspire everyone with your stories. I mean, you both have gone on to establish, to break cycles of insecurity, just as my parents did. And you got married, you've built these families, and you serve people. And I guess that's what moves me so profoundly about you, Dr. Knighton, and you, Dr. Darius Brooks, Pastor, Reverend Dr. Darius Brooks. That with all of the pain in your life, you have seen possibilities and you have been empowered. And I just thank God for you, because all of your tests have given you splendid testimonies for everybody. And we just thank God for you. Thank God, thank God. Dr. Darius Brooks, top 30 song on the Billboard charts this week, doctorate, and honored by President Joseph Biden, and indeed, one of the world's leading health experts, Dr. Shanita Knighton. Oh boy, I think of what Reverend Clay Evans, my pastor, said, it is no secret what God can do. What he's done for others, he's done for you. Want to see both of you? It is no secret what God can do. Back with in just a few minutes. And everybody, I want you to call me. And let's talk about President Biden's age. What do you think about it? Is it his age or is it something else? Back in just a few minutes on the Santita Jackson Show. Dr. Knighton, thank you for being so patient. Darius got his GED. And when I look at the distance that he has traveled in his life, it's just amazing. When I look at the distance that you've traveled in your life, it's just amazing. It's just amazing.
Thank you.
And I guess that's the good news, and I guess that's the health, because you've come out of this, both of you, bringing the people. You didn't leave anyone behind. You sought to bring people forward with you, and that's a very difficult thing. I think about a man who helped to raise my father, a man my great-grandmother married, but she divorced him. And he lived a pretty hard life, and he was on the edges of life. And my father, when he was running for president, went to see him, and this gentleman, bless his heart, lived way off in the yonder somewhere. And so when he heard the police, he was from the kind of background these folks would start running. Okay. And so when he saw all of these SUVs and whatnot pull up, and the police, and, the Bureau of Investigation, because, Dad needed that kind of protection when he was running for president. And my father was walking up to the porch, and he said, boy, don't you ever do that to me. I almost gave me a heart attack. don't you? He said, but every time I come to Greenville, I try to see. He said, don't you just look, you just keep on running, son. Run, Jesse, run. And run all the way from there, just go. Oh, my gosh. Oh, honey, that was one of the richest things. I said, I looked, I was like, oh my goodness, what is he doing? And my father just said, he just squeezed my hands. Shush, shush, shush. He said, honey, he's lived a life on the margins. He said, and that's why Daddy's worked so hard. And he said, but people like that, when I had the opportunity to go to college on scholarship, my father had to come home after his first semester, toward the end of his first semester, because he'd gotten a big injury when he was at the University of Illinois. And but they wouldn't let him come into the pool halls. They wouldn't let him hang in the streets. They said, son, the library's that way. And they wouldn't allow my father in because he was black. He could check out a book, I think, in the back. They said, well, whatever it is, you're not coming out here, because come January, you will be in college again. So there's that. So I just wanted to share that story. Oh, Joyce, honey, I got more stories like that, okay? But that's why I wanted Dr. Knighton. It just came to me as he was talking, and I thought about President Biden, Dr. Knighton, acknowledging Darius and his works. He honored him this week, and I saw him on the cover of Billboard, a top 30 song that he has this week. And I thought about him now being Reverend Dr. Darius
1 minute.
Brooks. It just moved me so it brought me to tears. I said, look at God. And only God. Do we have Attorney Patillo up?
Not yet. I was going to call him as soon as we come back since we
Okay.
have Dr. Knighton on a little later.
Okay. Well, no, just bring him up as soon as possible because I want to make sure that it'll help me with the rhythm. Okay, sweetie?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much. And everyone, give Alex some love today. He is always moving things along. We just love him. Alex, give him some love, everybody, over here. And like and share the show. Like and share the show. Hey, Kenneth, how you doing? Natasha, how you doing? Well, you know, I share because maybe it'll help you. We all come from somewhere, okay? So just get on over yourself. And don't leave any
10
part of
seconds.
your experience behind. It all matters. Every hurt and every happiness makes you who you are. That's what
Stand by.
Albertina Walker told me. Love you. Coming up.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. Yes, we can. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world. I am
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. Just had some nice laughs during the break. That's where you have to come to the Santita Jackson and Friends page and to the Santita Jackson Show on YouTube. Of course, we've had Reverend Dr. Darius Brooks. Yes, he does have an honorary doctorate, so he's Reverend Dr. Brooks now. And his birthday's coming up this weekend. Yay! He's going to hit that magic number 60. Love it. Oh! And then, of course, he top 30 song on the Billboard charts and on and on and on. But we have got Dr. Shanina Knighton, who has like an evangelical zeal about our health, about infection prevention. She was like, and what do they say? An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So she tries to catch us on the front side. So would you wash your hands, please? And I thought about this, and I thought about their powerful stories because they both are very, very powerful people. They both come from, we all come from, life in the margins. And yet she's the first person in her family to get a high school diploma, let alone a college degree and a doctorate. And he didn't get his diploma, got a GED, and now he's got a doctorate. Look at God. You just can't make this stuff up. And only God can do it, and there's no secret what God can do. Thank you, Reverend Evans. Thank you. What he's done for others, he'll do for you, you, and you. Whatever your religious persuasion, I really don't care about that. I really don't. I just want you to know yours great self that's going to make you greater than you ever thought you could be. So I want you to call me at 773-763-9278 and let me know what you think about President Biden and age. Everyone's talking about that now. Dr. Knighton, and age is what it is, but I'm wondering if it's about how robust he may appear to be or not appear to be. So I want you all to call me at 773-763-9278. Dr. Knighton, my grandmother, who worked in the Veterans Administration Hospital, she was one of the persons who would pass out she was one of the food ladies. She would be on that cart coming and bringing you your food, and she learned a lot in the hospital, and she was almost, I told you, like a germaphobe. Not almost, that's what she was. She washed everything every day. The sheets you slept on were not going to be the sheets you went to bed on were not going to be the same sheets that you had at night. I mean, she washed constantly. But she also did something very interesting. As soon as you got home, she said you must wash off the dirt of the day. Can you talk to me about that? Does that make any sense to you?
It makes a lot of sense to me, and it's something that we don't take into account often is what we pick up when we are out in public.
Ms. Wells and Attorney Patel are on.
I found it interesting. There were some studies that came out during the pandemic, and it showed that COVID can live on the skin for like up to 9 hours, right?
Ooh.
And so we think about the debris that is on our skin. And so when people will be out, like think about just dust. Dust particles fly in the air. People don't think about dust being an accumulation of different bacteria, different germs, and different things that actually accumulate. But by the time we come back into our homes, we've either picked that up from subways, we've picked it up from closed-in halls, we've picked it up from buildings, we've picked it up from being outside, we've picked it up from interacting with others. And so when you come inside of your home, you essentially are carrying whatever bacteria and germs through the day. Now, while we know that bacteria and different things do build up our immune system, some germs are not always good germs. And so there's practices, I'm sure that your grandmother had, such as making sure you wash your hands and wash your face when you came in the house. Mm-hmm. And that's important because think about the fact that you'll be laying those germs right down on your pillow, or that you'll be interacting, bringing those outside germs right into your home. And so it's the same thing even in regards to like shoe removal, how some people won't let you make it past the first door with their shoes on. Think about how many times somebody has spit on the sidewalk or, done anything and then what's accumulated. And I don't know if you remember, but when Ebola was around and they was talking about this in certain areas of Africa, they were talking about the fact that some of the high-risk areas was areas where people actually spit on the ground. And so we don't think about those germs that end up accumulating on the ground, that end up on the bottom of our shoes, and then end up in our homes. And so because we don't think about that, and mind you, we're sharing the same ground with healthcare workers, people that maybe do, in sewers and all kinds of things. You just never know the ground that we walk on, which is why it's such a blessing that it rains, right? Because we know that some of those germs can be washed away, but it's still important to make sure that you're conscious of the germs that you bring into your home, because that's the make or break between you and the next illness that you may have.
Dr. Shanina Knighton, everybody. Hey, Dr. Nina is her handle on social media, HEYDRNINA. And I was going to ask you about something else completely different, but as I thought about you and Dr. Brooks and you and your personal histories, and I thought about my grandmother and just, she grew up in grinding poverty. And she was one of those, whenever I see farm workers, I think of my grandmother because that's what she was. Florida was basically unincorporated 70, 80, 90 years ago. It was a swamp. And my grandmother, like so many people, would get on the boats and she'd go between the Caribbean and South and Central America to go to work for the day or for a season. And so when I see those people, I think of her, and I just think of them. And I thank God for her journey and for yours. Dr. Knighton, sending you so much love to you. Sending you so much love today.
Thank you.
Sending you so much love, admiration, and respect. Doctor, I appreciate you, and I think people need to know your journey, because I don't know what somebody who's listening in this audience, I don't know what they're going through and what they're trying to grow through. And your story can inspire someone. We all need to share our stories. Everybody's got something, everybody. Everybody's got something that can help someone else to know that they can make it. So just share. Don't be ashamed. Share. Sending you so much love. We've got Shapiro Wells. I'm putting my order in over the radio. I want my mixed greens with my ham hocks. Thank you.
You got it, Santita. Whatever I got you. Whatever you want to order, and we'll have your greens ready. Just tell me what day you need them.
Immediately.
Got it.
Immediately. I eat your greens when they're coming in my door, right? You know that.
I know.
And you always bring them to me hot, and I'm like, ooh. Then I have to share them with my family. I'm like, And my father always wants more. He wants banana pudding. All the stuff that you should not give him, but you're like, well, I'll just give him a little bit. And then it turns out that jar full, it's like 3 or 4 servings. I'm like, what is this? Okay.
I'm going to try to make sugar-free for him. I was just thinking about that the other day because I've been dipping and dabbing with vegan food. I was like, I need to try some sugar-free dishes. Maybe with some stevia or something like that, and see how it comes out. I'm going to try it first, see if I like it, and then I'll let him taste test. I know he's not going to like it like he likes the regular, but
he's not.
We'll try to make it a little bit better.
He's going to make that awful face, and my mother's going to say, it's either this or nothing. What? Oh, whoa. Oh, girl, so how can we get some of these wonderful vittles?
So, yeah, call us at 708-526-4546, 708-526-4546. We're taking orders, not this weekend because we're doing an out-of-town event, But we are actually open Monday, where you can call us and you can get all of our greens, green beans, mac and cheese, smothered potatoes. You can also get our smothered beef, our smothered chicken, our ribs, our Cajun pasta, spaghetti, masticholi. The list is endless. So call us at 708-526-4546. 708-526-4546. We're also running into prom season. We're doing a prom tomorrow, and we're doing balloon arches, as well as also custom suite tables, as well as also our custom backdrops and our name table. So call us at 708-526-4546. We look forward to serving you. Thank you so much, Santita.
All right. Celebrations by us. Well, now we have one of your favorite people, Chappelle Wells, and everybody's favorite here, Attorney Robert Patillo. How you doing, Attorney Robert Patillo?
I am well.
We have got a lot to talk about today. Of course, you can catch him on WAOK from 1 to 4 every Sunday. And please, it's based in Atlanta, but you can catch it all around the world. You do not want to miss that show. It is fire every Sunday from 1 to 4 Eastern Standard Time. And let's talk about this presidential race, because it doesn't seem like it's been 4 years, because we've talked about President Trump, just as you and Dwight McKee predicted. It's like he's never left office, Attorney Patillo. And so it doesn't feel like it's been 4 years, but it's been 4 years since then former Vice President Biden announced. 4 years later, he's announcing to run for re-election, even with the legal troubles that former President Trump is encountering, in which he finds himself engulfed. He's not encountering them; he's in the midst. And with a looming indictment coming out of Atlanta, out of Georgia, he's still leading the pack. No one's talking about his age. Now, mind you, he's deep into his 70s. You've got Elizabeth Warren, who's in her 70s. You've got Bernie Sanders. He's in his 80s. I'm sad that he's not running for president this year. What am I going to do? Even Robert Kennedy Jr. 70. Oh, my gosh. What? So here we are. But everyone is centering on President Biden's age. Is it his age or is it health? I mean, what is it? The appearance of healthfulness or not? I don't know what it is. So I want you all to call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. What do you think it is, Robert Patillo?
Well, you know, it's interesting. I think it's a lack of familiarity with Biden as a political figure, because despite him being in Washington, D.C. for 50-plus years between the United States Senate and Vice President and now President, he's still very much a unknown figure in American politics. So if you really think about it, in the 80s, we weren't really talking about President Biden. In the 90s, that was the Clinton era, we weren't talking about Biden. In the 2000s, that was the Bush era, we weren't really talking about Biden. And even during the Obama administration, Biden wasn't really the main character in American politics. But if you have observed Biden closely over the course of the last 40 or 50 years, you'll know this confusion, this lack of articulation, this kind of getting lost mid-sentence, this rambling and ranting that people are attributing to his age, that's just how he's always acted. This is not new. If you listen to a speech from Joe Biden from 1988, it sounds just about as confused as it sounds now. But I think because of this appearance that Biden has of being this shambling and disheveled old man who doesn't know what's going on, almost a Mr. Magoo type figure, this is why his age has become such an issue. Because even on the Saudi Arabian version of Saturday Night Live, they had a character do an impression of President Biden and Kamala Harris, of President Biden being an old man getting lost on the podium, and Kamala Harris basically being his wet nurse to change his diaper and take care of him. We've seen similar images being perpetuated by right-wing media, kind of pushing this idea of concurrently that one, President Biden is the despotic head of a modern crime family and the mastermind behind the deep state, but also a disheveled old man who doesn't know where he's at any given time. And they haven't really figured out which one of those caricatures they're going to go forward with. But I think because of many of these slips, these gaffes, stumbling up, the airplane steps on multiple occasions, the stories he tells where he gets lost midway through the sentence, jokes he'll tell where he'll forget the punchline midway through. This is what makes people think that maybe the president doesn't have all his faculties there. And I think that's part of the difficulty that he's going to have to overcome going into 2024. But the good thing is, similar to 2020, the bar is set so low for him that if he can just display competence, that will be enough for many voters to be reinforced that he'll be able to get the job done.
That'll be enough. I mean, with the way President Trump comes in on people, do you think that'll be enough?
I think so. The reason is that Biden is very much a blank slate, tabula rasa. People portray onto him what they want to see, what they want to believe, what they want to think. It's very much not about him, but it's about the concept of normalcy, that after 4 years of Trump and now, a second 4 years of Trump, people get tired of the Omarosa of the situation. They get tired of the Scaramucci. They get tired of the constant scandals and the porn stars and the agreeing with Russia and so all up and down the line. But President Biden was very much elected to simply be a stabilizing figure in American politics, and the kind of dog and pony circus show of Trumpism. President Biden portrays calm. You get to forget about President Biden being president. He's not always at the top of your mind. During the Trump administration, most people knew half the dang cabinet because they were always doing something crazy. President Trump would see somebody on TV and then make him Treasury Secretary.
You have a new caller.
Twice. You saw Larry Kudlow on Fox News, and that's, Larry Kudlow was Treasury Secretary. You saw Bill Barr on Fox News, and then he was the Attorney General. Things like that don't really happen under the Biden administration. I think for people who are simply looking for a steady hand, someone to keep the bills paid, the lights on, and to stop us from falling into a recession, that really is all they're looking for. Just they need permission to vote for Biden, from Biden, to show that he's competent enough to get the job done. I think that's very much enough to overcome many of the negatives against him.
Hey, everybody, call me at 773-763-9278. I want to know what your thoughts are. Because this is like, the conversation that is being had in corporate media. And, they do a lot of shaping of the narrative. And I can't help but think, as we go to the callers, Robert Patillo, that what they're doing is they're trying to reshape the conversation, right? Because part of the real conversation that people have been having has been, is he well enough? Because sometimes it can be painful to see him get lost in a story, but that's what happens, with people. It certainly happens with older people. It doesn't mean that you are not sharp. With the advancing of Parkinson's, my father's speech has been impaired. Mm-hmm. But when people sit with him and when he sits and takes his time, you're like, oh, wait a minute, he's as sharp as ever. So it's like, writing people off, I think, is always a dangerous thing.
And I tell people all the time that, age is a factor, but it's not the factor. Mm-hmm. Lauren Boebert is 36 years old. Matt Gaetz is in his early 30s. Kyle Rittenhouse is in his 20s. Or so on and so forth. So just because someone's younger doesn't mean they're better. It doesn't mean they're more capable. Mm-hmm. And what the Biden people have been saying is, look at the record, look at the things they've gotten done. 3 weeks ago, we were looking at a complete collapse of the U.S. banking system after Silicon Valley Bank went under. They came in, took decisive action, and we ain't talked about it in 2 weeks. If you look at the inflation crisis that we were going through last fall, Chairman Powell Powell and the Fed came in. They took very clear, decisive actions. As I think I said yesterday, they took a page out of Paul Volcker's book. They stabilized the inflation on the market by raising interest rates. They were able to stabilize the U.S. currency as it looked like de-dollarization was going to become a big thing on the international stage. So the Biden people will say, well, if you don't think I can do the job, just look at the amount of things we've got in pass from the most significant legislation in multiple generations, including bipartisan legislation at a point in time when many people thought that was impossible. And they'll say you can talk about the personal, you can talk about the president being confused, this, that, and the other, but on the record and on the numbers, he's got it more done than perhaps the last 3 presidents in their first term, and maybe in the last 5 presidents in their first term, where you really look dollar for dollar at the things he's got it done. Just in the last week, President Biden had a groundbreaking summit with the president of South Korea. Enhancing U.S. protections for South Korea, saying that if there was a North Korean nuclear strike, it would be met in kind. This upgrades America's previous policy, which would react to a North Korean strike with conventional munitions. Now President Biden is saying that if you nuke South Korea or Japan, we will nuke you back. That is a significant escalation in American security protections in the region. In addition to what President Biden announced last fall, where he said that America, for the first time, was now a guarantor of Taiwan, that if China attacks Taiwan, President Biden has made it clear that it will be American policy to respond in kind. That is very much an escalation from what American policy has been previously, in some making Taiwan a suzerain of the United States of America. Also, he announced this week that they were going to be creating a military base for nuclear submarines on the South Korean peninsula. This is all part of the effort to box in China, coming on the heels of his agreement with both the Philippines to put U.S. bases there and Japan, with Australia to provide nuclear submarines there. So if you look on the record, there are a lot of things that are getting done and going on, whether you agree or disagree. There's a lot of kinetic force in action. And the media chooses to pay attention to the kind of easy, low-hanging fruit is the President Old story versus, well, is it a good idea that we've increased military spending in the last year by $50 billion? Those are the stories that are hard to talk about, and therefore the media ignores it. The easy story is, hey, the old man got lost.
Barry, what's on your mind today?
Well, I think it's interesting, the discussion that you just had, and I will counter and say that Joe Biden's age is even more of a concern to me because, for example, Bernie Sanders' age is not a concern. He's vital, he's smart, he works for the right causes for the most part, but President Biden's judgment's always been poor, and the laundry list of things that he just got done, as his record has shown, much of that is in the interest of corporate America, the defense industry, the healthcare industry, and that's who he's been working for all his life. So now that he seems to be confused, I would say as a physician, I got in big trouble because I was suggesting he might be in the early stages of dementia during the campaign.
Okay, so wait a minute, hold on. You're a physician?
What? Yes.
Okay, so all right, this is great. So tell us what it is that you see. I mean, what is your specialty? I mean, although I know all physicians are generalists until you decide what your specialty is going to be.
Absolutely. I doubled in, I initially started in psychology, and then I moved over to ophthalmology of all things. But I certainly...
don't hate on the ophthalmologist. I got to see one a little later on today. So I love you.
Well, I can certainly do that for you off the air. That's privileged health information. But anyway, so when I was, in the first debates in 2016, it was easy to see that he was not properly oriented to person, place, or time, which is certainly part of just a basic cognitive test. He still does not seem to be. He's better at sometimes, he's worse at sometimes. I wonder if they're giving him some medications or something else is happening to make him go up and down like that. But there's times when he seems to have no energy and can just read off of the page and barely do that. And there's times when he has more energy and is joking around and saying things that people think are funny and I don't. But the bottom line is he's not oriented to person, place, or time. He doesn't always know where he's supposed to be at the proper time. He says things that are reckless about, replacing Putin and, says things that are completely reckless and always have to be walked back. And those aren't just gaps. These are serious things. And the decisions he's making seem to be, even the bills that he's passed, these bills with spending so much money, and people are saying, wow, look at this great bill he got passed. The Inflation Reduction Act has just as much or more in it for corporate America as it does for anybody. It's the usual 80-20, 80% for corporate America, 20% for the people, the scraps for the people. So he may be getting stuff done, but more and more, like escalating with North Korea, escalating with Russia, escalating with China. I mean, he's putting us in a very dangerous and tenuous situation at the behest of the defense industry and the people who want global dominance. So he's working for them, and now that his mental condition is, I will say, deteriorating, he's much more susceptible to those forces, I believe, and that's very concerning.
Hey, you know what? It's the what is it? It's the corporation state, the incorporation state that he is from. So it's something to be said. Can you stay right here with us for a minute and do a little crosstalk with us?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I mean I think it's important. All of these things are very important, and these are the questions, even with the accomplishments. But the presidents don't accomplish these things on their own, nor should they. They have a team. They have teams that help them to get things done. So it's concerning. But what's concerning also is this debt ceiling. The debt limit. Boy, oh boy, oh boy. Stay right here, Attorney Robert Patillo. We're going to have Congressman Jonathan Jackson with us, and then later on, Dr. Max Wolf. We've got to talk about this. A whole lot is on the chopping block. A whole lot is on the chopping block. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a few minutes. Hey, Doctor, it's wonderful having you on with us today. Is he there?
He is. I just put him on hold.
Oh, okay.
Barry, can you hear me?
Dr. Barry?
Yeah, this is Barry on this side.
Oh, no, it's all right. It's all right. And, of course, you're on with Attorney Robert Patillo. Hey, we are real clear on the corporatocracy and, where his politics have been, over the past 50 years. I mean, trust me, I got it. But, it's very interesting. I've heard some other healthcare professionals register the same concerns. What are your concerns given what, you've got the 30,000-foot view because, of course, you're not his physician. But like other healthcare professionals, there are things that you all see, that a nurse will see, that a psychologist, that a psychiatrist will see that, I'm going to miss, in all likelihood. So what concerns you? What is your concern?
Well, there's a couple of things. First of all, when people say that physicians, you're not his physician, you're not seeing him,
Mm-hmm.
you have to remember, Santita, that during the pandemic, we've been doing telemedicine.
Mm-hmm.
And I have more, and physicians can have more views, footage, and discussion that they can view of Joe Biden than they can of their patients. There's so much recent footage of him, and so many press conferences, and so much discussion that I actually have more information on Joe Biden and his interactions than I would if he was a patient of mine.
I believe you. That makes sense. Because now it is done by telephone, by Zoom.
Exactly. Right. So in general, you can see many times if you watch Joe Biden at a recent international summit he went to, he was sitting at a table and really looking down at a piece of paper and talking very slowly and very quietly. And I can even try to find that and send that to you. And when he was asked questions during that time period, he was unable to answer in kind, and he would give a very brief answer, maybe half a sentence or one sentence, and then somebody supporting him would answer the rest of the question. He was unable to respond. I've seen him in this condition in many situations where he is just looking down at a piece of paper and his responses are delayed. And you'll notice also when he's on a teleprompter many times and he's talking, he'll say the words in the teleprompter, and then anything that he says that is off the teleprompter, and many times he's not doing that as much, is completely inappropriate. It's completely inappropriate for the situation. It's either talking about a situation that never happened, so he's recalling something that didn't happen, or talking about a situation with somebody, a person in it, who wasn't really in that situation or place. Like he did that with his son, Hunter Biden, recently in terms of where he was at war. And he kept saying the same thing over and over again in a location that he wasn't at war. So he's got a problem with orientation towards person, place, or time. He has sometimes a problem if you watch him walking he has a problem with spatial orientation when he's coming up to a podium or going up some stairs. He cannot tell or determine spatially where he is supposed to be or where that stair is. So he's reaching down a lot of times to figure out. So there's something happening with him that's cognitive that is deteriorating. I'm surprised he made it this long, Santita. Frankly, I thought he would already be having difficulty ending his term. And maybe they're protecting him and hiding him enough so he does. But I think there's going to be times coming up when you don't see him very much at all.
Well, I tell you what, Arlene feels that, what you're doing is dangerous and self-serving. I don't agree with that, Arlene, but I hear you. I felt that what you had to say needed to be amplified. But Daryl says, what do you say about Trump? Is he fit to be president? From your observations.
No, he's never been fit to be president. He's never been fit to be. I mean, you can watch him.
Okay, because Daryl, the same man, wants to know: are you a Trumpster? I don't think so, because he's really against the corporate.
Oh, Lord. See, this is the problem, Cynthia.
I know.
This is the problem. When you criticize somebody and try to tell something that could have some truth in it, I'm not. A loyal Democrat, although I support Democrats who do not take corporate money, and I work for them. I work for Bernie Sanders. I work for Elon Omar. I work for Cory Bush. I canvass for them. I phone bake for them, rather. So I'll work for the people who are working for the people. But if people aren't working for the people, I'm going to talk about it, and that's why people call me a Trumper. Because I'm not totally in favor of the Ukraine war.
Because you think independently. Yeah, trust me, I get it. I mean, and Karen, I don't. This is why I like for you all to call in, because I don't like to miss anything. The reason I'm giving him time is because he's a physician and he's called in. I wish you'd call in too. And because Robert, and I'm sure because Robert is a brilliant host, a brilliant broadcaster. And when you have people like Barry, Dr. Barry, I'm just saying that to you affectionately, but that's also true. Call in, we will start. Robert, you start asking them questions, will you not?
Absolutely, and I often get criticized for having long and in-depth conversations because there's kind of two ways when you can do radio. You can do a rapid fire where I get 30 seconds or a minute from everybody, there's no really developed thoughts, or I can spend 10 minutes on a conversation where we can really dive down into things. I prefer the 10-minute version.
Me too. Because hearing, because I've heard different people psychologists and psychiatrists make observations about President Trump, about him and his family, and about their interactions. And, and they've stood by them. Have they been public with them? No. But they've made observations, just given their professional experience. And so when we get someone like Dr. Barry on, who has these concerns, and particularly when we're in an environment with, we're politicizing medicine, we're politicizing science. And that's what's dangerous to me. We can't even ask questions about the medicines that we take, that we're being asked to take, that we're being told to take. You can't ask a question unless you're called an come on, y'all. We got to be broader than that.
I'll give you an example. I'll give you an example.
Hold that thought, because I'm about to come right back on, because I want you to speak to that when we get on the other side. Do we have Congressman Jackson up?
I'm calling him right at 7.
Okay. Oh, it is 7.
30 seconds.
I'll come right to you, Robert, and then I'm going to get the congressman on.
10 seconds. Stand by, please.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world. I am green.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. It is Thursday already, April 27th, 2023, already having a fascinating conversation about President Biden and the questions about his age, questions that we're not asking about Bernie Sanders, who's in his 80s, and Elizabeth Warren, who's in her 70s, and former President Trump, who's in his 70s, and Maxine Waters, who's in her 80s, and on and on and on, Nancy Pelosi in their 80s. And you like to see people function so well in, as they continue to live. But people are asking questions about Joe Biden, and I don't know if it's about his age or if it's about how he functions. So we want to talk about that. And then we're talking about this debt ceiling, everybody. What is being cut? Well, apparently we are being cut, and we're going to be talking with Congressman Jonathan Jackson about that, and Dr. Max Wolf and Attorney Robert Patillo, because that has been, that was Congressman Jackson's assertion when he was with us earlier this week. So let's get to some of these headlines so that we can get to the rest of the show. Extreme weather, a storm system that has already pounded parts of Louisiana and Texas and Florida. Well, these storms are going to keep on coming. Portions of these states are at risk of scattered severe storms even today, everybody. Tennis ball-sized hail. Praying for all of these people, along with this massive water that they're getting from these storms. Former President Donald Trump has lost an emergency attempt to block former Vice President Mike Pence from testifying about their direct conversation after the 2020 election. A transgender lawmaker in Montana was banned from the state's Republican-dominated House chamber this week after sparking protests over LGBTQ plus rights. Representative Zoe Zephyr, a 34-year-old Democrat, previously said GOP lawmakers would have, quote, blood on their hands, close quote, for passing bills restricting gender-affirming care for minors. And those are just some of the headlines as we talk about the debt ceiling. The U.S. House of Representatives voted yesterday to pass the GOP plan to raise the nation's debt ceiling. Is this a play to push the president to negotiate with them and to cut social programs? We are going to see on the Santita Jackson Show as we bring up Congressman Jonathan Jackson. And just in a hot second, let me give you some more news that you can use today. 61 degrees will be our high in Chicago today, clear. 64 degrees will be the high in Minneapolis, St. Paul. There will be showers. The Grizzlies 116, the Lakers 99. The Lakers lead their series 3-2. The Heat won their series in overtime 128-126. The Bucks is the first time a number one seed is lost. Wow, in a long time, everybody. The Warriors 123, the Kings 116. Of course, the Kings lead that series 3-2, but the Warriors keep coming back. The Celtics will be playing the Hawks tonight. Of course, the Celtics lead that series 3-2. In the NHL, who's going to get that Stanley Cup? We don't know yet. The Panthers overtime 4-3 as the Bruins lead their series 3-2, and the Kraken 3. And the Avalanche 2. Seattle, of course, leads their series 3-2 tonight. The Jets will be playing the Golden Knights. In Major League Baseball, the Yankees 12, the Twins 6, and the Royals will be playing the Twins tonight. The Blue Jays, shut out the White Sox, everybody. And they'll be playing, the White Sox will be playing the Rays tonight. And the Padres 3, the Cubs, the Padres 5, the Cubs 3, and they'll be playing the Padres once again today for an afternoon game, everybody. If you're interested in buying a home, and if you've not owned a home over the past 3 years, I want you to give a shout out to Team Hochberg at 855-56-DAVID, 855-56-DAVID. They are your trusted local lender. They want to help you to own a home and create some multi-generational wealth, even in this environment. It is possible to own a home today, everybody. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac have been alarmed by these declining numbers of American home buyers. Last year, just 26% of new home buyers were first-time home buyers, down from 34% the year before, and then the numbers were much higher in years past. So Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac have lowered the interest rates, and they're incentivizing first-time home buyers, everybody. And so as these rates can go up at any time, you need to reach out to Team Hochberg so that you can take advantage of this program. But first, if you're in the Chicago area, your total household income has to be below $105,700, and you cannot have owned a home over the past 3 years. Call them at 855-56-DAVID, 855-56-DAVID, or go to 56david.com and see if you qualify for this program. Tell them everything, and give yourself an opportunity to start multi-generational wealth for yourself, for your children, for your grandchildren. Homeowners beget homeowners and they beget more homeowners. So go on and give yourself a shout. Give yourself a chance and give Team Hochberg a shout out, 855-56-DAVID. Everybody, let's talk about this Republican majority plan to say yes to extreme cuts against average Americans, to save billionaire tax breaks Or is it that simple? Do we have Congressman Jonathan Jackson with us?
He said he'll call back tomorrow, same time. He had to go.
Oh, I'm sorry. We're going to miss him today. Well, he said he had to go, so I'm going to get him tomorrow, and I want to hear from you. Call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. But first, Attorney Robert Patillo, you needed to make a point that because we were having a lot of crosstalk with Dr. Berry on the other side of the break, and he was coming under some criticism from some people because he was not lauding President Biden. And they said, you must be a Trumpster. Everybody, we have to grow up in our politics because we'll never make it if that's the way we're going to do this. And we shouldn't do it this way. We all ought to be able to withstand scrutiny without being accused of being something that we are. You know, we have a presidential candidate who's polling well north of 10%, and his numbers are growing. But because he disagrees with the status quo about certain medicines, we've written him off, and we call him all kinds of names. It's just not true. We've talked about people, we've not talked to them. And the least we can do is listen to a physician give us their assessment. It was indeed, I don't know how many of you watch HGTV, but Robert, I watch HGTV. I love it, love it, love it. And there is Tariq El Moussa, who is a master house flipper. Brilliant, brilliant young man. There was a nurse who was watching his show, his first show, and Flip or Flop. And she saw something on his neck and reached out to him through social media. Do you know that he had cancer? He never would have known had this television viewer not noticed something. She said, you need to get that checked out. And it turns out he had cancer. Thank goodness. So we'll see. I think we owe it to people who really understand a particular space. At least give them the chance to talk. You don't have to attack them. Robert Patillo?
Yeah, on a similar point I was going to make this when the doctor was on. I've been doing criminal defense law for over 15 years now. I've represented a lot of drug addicts, a lot of people who are going through long-term rehabilitation, people who are still dealing with addiction issues. So I kind of have an eye for when people are kind of struggling with addiction. I don't need to be right next to Don Jr. to know that man has a cocaine issue. You can look at him. Well,
now let's not say that because we don't know.
Well, he has the signs that would indicate that based upon the things that I've seen in the past. And I think that if you're looking at somebody from afar who has all the signs indicating something based on your experience and expertise, you can make comments on it. Similar to when the doctor says, well, looking at Joe Biden from afar, these are things that I've seen previously. These are the things that indicate that. People who have spatial awareness issues, people who have cognitive issues when it comes to speech, etc. So I don't think we can simply write off that he's not President Biden's treating physician as to if he can make his opinion. Somebody else with similar expertise might have a differing opinion. I think you line up all the opinions, and then you can from there make your determination as to what you believe the objective truth would be. I think that we have to get more voices in the public space, not fewer voices in the public space.
New caller.
Things are up for scrutiny. I also think that the Biden campaign needs to develop a better answer from their press team to these questions. I don't think they can continue to simply pretend it's not happening because everyone sees it happening. So either you can proceed with, as I said, this is just kind of how Biden has always been, because you can go back to the 88 campaign and he was making similar gaffes. Remember, it was gaffes in the 88 campaign that resulted in him having to drop out of the race.
Because he was running against Reverend. Trust me, I saw it. It was like, oh my gosh.
Exactly. So for people who say, well, he's making verbal gaffes, that shows that he may be unfit. He was making worse ones back in the 80s. This is the tame version of Biden now compared to what he was saying back then. But I think the campaign is going to have to put forward a compelling case just to kind of calm people. People are looking for the right to vote for Biden. They want someone to make it plain to them that it's okay, that things will be fine, and that's going to be really the biggest issue in this race. Because the other alternative that they could run with is that doesn't even matter. that the president very much is a figurehead, that they set the tone for the administration, but the day-to-day operations are handled by other people. You know, you can look at Ronald Reagan, who towards the end, the government was very much being run by Nancy Reagan and advisors. You can look at Woodrow Wilson after the negotiations for the Treaty of Versailles. Clemenceau gave him a stroke, and he was all but unable to execute the office of the presidency for the last 2 years of his administration, and his wife and advisors were effectively the president of the United States. You can look at FDR and polio. You can look at JFK and his medical issues. You can look at George W. Bush and being an idiot. There are all sorts of presidents who have not really had the faculties to control the office, but that did not impede them for going forward. So I think whatever the answer the administration creates, they need to just pick one, stick with it, and run out there. But the current method is pretending that what everyone is noticing isn't happening. I don't think that's an effective message going forward, and they have a few months to figure out what they want to do with this.
Yeah, and deal with it frontally. And Thomas Grasser, I hear you, but one thing you cannot do on this timeline is use foul language. So work that out. If you use foul language, I invite you and anyone else to leave. We don't do that here. All right, everybody. And you say, Arlene, no incumbent in modern history is debated in the primaries, but things change. I think that he should debate. I think that everybody should debate because we need to have information. And the questions that people have, now that he's been president, he's wanted to be president all of his life, now he got his wish. Now people ought to be able to ask him questions. And I don't think that'll make him weaker, it'll make him stronger. Larnell, you think I'm a Trump sympathizer? No. I've just been in public life and I've been in politics and the church all of my life. I don't believe in trashing people. And I don't think that trashing people would make you necessarily someone who does not sympathize with Trump. In fact, many of the trolls and many of the people who are, who I would say they're agent provocateurs, they talk the most junk on everybody. In fact, and you know this, Robert, from your own understanding of how intelligence works, it's the person who is in your group who wants to burn the Bastille, who wants to burn down the building. It turns out they're the police. At some point, we just have to calm down and just have a mature conversation about people and stop railing on people. Let me tell you something. Part of the reason it broke my heart to see my brother have to go away to boarding school when he was about 10 or 11 years of age, and it broke his heart too. But people created such a hostile environment in Chicago for us. And my mother said, if he stays here, they will destroy him. I know what this destructive talk does to people. I know what it does to their families. And because I know it, I don't want to be what I've not liked in others. And sometimes it takes hard spiritual work, but that's what I'm going to do. I can disagree with President Trump, former President Trump's positions, and I can disagree with some of Biden's positions. I want my voting rights protected, and he has not done that yet. And the only reason he's president is because of my vote and your vote. And I have the right to talk to him about that and demand it. Not ask for it, demand it. So I'm not going to be what other people be. I don't have anything to prove to anybody. I don't need to be unkind to anybody to prove that I don't like your policies. I'm not going to do that. And if you want that, then I am not your girl. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do it. It's that kind of mean-spirited mess. I am not doing it. I'm not going to do it. So am I a Trump sympathizer? Please don't insult me. That's ridiculous. But do I have to, do I know that God loves him as much as God loves me? Yeah. Yeah, I know that too. Because my Bible told me so. And the people around me told me that too. So, I kind of give people space. It doesn't mean that I won't fight you, but I will not try to destroy you. That is not what I'm here to do. So let me go to Paul from Seattle. Paul, what's on your mind?
Good morning, Santita.
Hey.
Nice to speak with you.
Good to hear your voice.
I want to talk about, I'd like to talk about the age of, let's say, you mentioned the several people, including President Biden, Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren.
Maxine Waters.
Diane. Sure. Okay. So let's consider a couple things here. The framers in all their infinite wisdom, so to speak, prescribed that Supreme Court justices will be terms for life. Now, I got to tell you, when you look at even the age of our grandparents were
a new caller
when they were our age.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you look at a person who was near the end of their life in colonial times, I think the framers knew, or at least in their opinion, an old person was not necessarily dysfunctional. And I'll tell you something else. If you consider being part of the church, I'll tell you there's nothing more political than the church.
Oh my
you
gosh.
Know that. And
yes.
Who has the highest esteem in the church? The elders have the highest esteem. It's not the young whippersnappers that have high esteem in the church. So the other thing is we never hear, even though I think Donald Trump is only, a couple of years younger than Joe Biden, nobody ever says, oh, he's old. But Donald Trump is in nowhere. Donald Trump hasn't been in as good a shape as my grandfather in the last 15 years. So my grandfather's been gone a long time. So I don't understand where, it's the individual and what they can do. Now, at this point, Senator Feinstein's not doing so well. Nobody's talking about Senator Grassley, who's every bit, he's the same age. Strom Thurmond, I think, hung in there until he was 94, for crying out loud. I don't know. And people still had high esteem for him.
And kept re-electing him.
The lines that he spoke. Down in the South, they sure love Strom Thurmond. So in terms of the age, I think it's on an individual basis. And from what I see, President Biden is still functioning well enough. And here's the thing about a young president. In brief, I would say if you want a progressive president, it's probably not going to be a young person. A young person is going to run the country like a business because that's the kind of frame, that's the frame of mind that young people have. It takes somebody with a little maturity to realize the nation is not a business. They have two diametrically opposed functions. The government, running a government and running a business. A business is to make a profit. The government is not to make a profit. And so I think when you're not necessarily giving it a fair shake as to what the difference is. You're not bringing all of the criticism that having a young candidate could have.
But that was not my point today. My point was, as I've been looking at the coverage of the 2024 presidential campaign, because that's where we're moving into that. Yeah. It's okay, but I wanted to explain that, I said, okay, well, let me ask about this, because, Richard Branson has a group called the Elders, right? And he gets leaders. You have to be at least 70 to be in that group. And his point is, it's the people who have had all of this life experience who we need to ask about how the world ought to run. So, I personally believe, that leadership, ought to be, the people who I'm going to listen to ultimately are older people because, they've just seen so much. They've seen so much. That having been said, I want to hear what everybody's got to say about this because these are issues that people are talking about at the water cooler, so to speak. Right, Paul? And so you want to know, so what are your thoughts on this? Because everybody's got thoughts, and many of us have older parents, and people have their own practical approach to this. But your closing thought, Paul.
Well, I just want to go touch back on Robert F. Kennedy. Okay, I'm not gonna trash him for his position on vaccines. I can say from my personal experience, I'm really glad that I had four boosts before I got COVID because I had hardly any symptoms at all. I had a sore throat for a couple of days, and I felt a little bit tired. But I was on the road, and I carried on with my business. I was on the road for 3 weeks when I got it, and I was like, what do I do now? I can't just return home. Okay, so I would say that he has a right to his viewpoint, but what does he know about it? As far as I know, he's not a scientist.
Yeah, but what he's not an anti-vaxxer either. And I think that we have to be very careful about that. What he has done down through the years as an environmental activist and lawyer is sue corporations and foundations that have put toxins in the environment, whether they were medicines or toxic material. That's what he's done. And when people have asked questions, Paul, about anything, you're called all kinds of names, and I think that is problematic because, as you know, with COVID, people have been all over the place with it. Some people have reacted to it. It's killed some people. Some people walked through it like it was a walk in the park. There's so much about it that we still do not know. And I think that until we have an environment in which people can ask questions, we're just not going to be able to move. I think, I've seen a lot of people be unfair on the left and the right about all of these issues. And that is disturbing to me because I think you need to be able to, as someone who was in science in college, incuriosity rules the day. It is unscientific to be incurious. It's unscientific because you're proving stuff in your labs every day, every week. That's what you're supposed to do. When you go to seminary, they start with there is no God. Now you got to build a case for God. I mean, that's what happens. So, I think that what we need to do is just kind of cool our jets and listen to people, stop talking about people, start talking to people, and start listening to them. And then you make your judgments. I am not going to let corporate media make a decision for me. I can't do it. I cannot do it. Because if I listened to them, I would have hated Dr. King. Because they sure did help shape an environment in which that got that man killed. They did that. They took drops from the FBI, made them gospel in the New York Times and other papers of record in the country. You better be careful, everybody. Because the dirt that people dig up on others can be dug up on you. It happens every single day. And we got to stop it. Happy birthday, D-Ray. Sending you so much love. Much love. Stay right here, everybody. Stay tuned for more conversation. Well, some conversation about Robert Patillo. We've got to talk about this debt ceiling and what the Republicans are trying to make us do. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a minute. Sending you much love, Paul. Paul, thank you for being with us today, sweetie. Is Paul there? Okay.
Paul dropped.
Oh, okay. Well, sending him much love. Robert Patillo?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for staying with me. I mean, we got Dr. Wolf coming up, but it's amazing. I mean, I think we've become very intolerant. And I think that's the intolerance that we don't want to see elsewhere. We have it over here. And that for me is really dangerous.
Well, it's very much political tribalism, where people become so invested in ensuring that their group, their team, I'm a Hawks fan, so I always want the Hawks to win no matter what. But you can't have that when it comes to politics, because just because someone's wearing your jersey doesn't mean they're on your side. Because we don't have a parliamentary system, we don't have a multi-party system, the two-party system is very much creates these big tents. And within those tents, you have to ensure that whoever's at the head of that is actually upholding your particular pole, your particular spoke in there. So whereas as African Americans, let's say,
Dr. Wolf is on.
Democratic tent, this progressive tent, this liberal tent, we still haven't seen voting rights get pushed through. We've seen other parts of the tent be held up, but we haven't seen criminal justice reform be pushed through. We've seen other parts of the tent be held up, but we haven't seen prison reform pushed through, our economic programs, or on down the line through what the African American agenda is. So there's nothing wrong with asking questions. Me asking questions about voting rights does not make me a Trumper or somehow against the president. It simply means that we have to work in our enlightened self-interest, as they say in political science, when it comes to how exactly we dictate our vote and what are the policy initiatives we're pushing going forward. And I think that the discussion about President Biden's aid from the corporate media is very much a canard because they don't want to dive into the policy aspects of it because those are the things that, kind of don't draw viewers in. Viewers are drawn in because since the mainstream media is based on ratings, they're drawn in by mess. They're drawn in by drama. They're drawn in by theater and pantomime. And because of that, we're having kind of a very surface-level conversation about, well, can an 80-something-year-old be president, as opposed to what exactly is the 80-year-old pushing forward? Are they pushing forward the actual policies and agenda? Are they putting people in place that are able to execute that? Because it's less important to me who the president is or what their age is versus, well, who are you putting in the Justice Department? Who are your federal judges? What's your governing philosophy? What is your doctrine on foreign policy? What's your doctrine on economic policy? How will you handle the following agenda items? So if you have an 80-year-old who's on the right side of those issues, I'm going to vote for the 80-year-old. If you have a 35-year-old who's on the wrong side of those issues, I'm going to be against the 35-year-old. And this is the conversation, I think, where as you said, the mainstream media leads us in the wrong directions.
Absolutely. Dr. Max Wolf, how are you?
Good. Thank you for having me.
Always. So we've been talking with Attorney Robert Patillo. I thought I was going to have Congressman Jackson on with you today, but he had to make a quick run. But, if you can be on with us tomorrow, we'd love that. Because, he always loves hearing from you. You crack him up.
Good.
In a good way. In a good way.
It's a generous sense of humor.
Oh, no, in a good way. And I know you know Attorney Robert Patillo.
Good morning, sir.
This is Dr. Max Wolf. You need to have him on your show.
I think we've had him on before, but I definitely need to have him on to talk about the debt ceiling if he's available this week anytime.
Yeah, we could look for a time.
1 minute.
I could probably help you the way I've helped Santita.
No, he's guided Santita. There you go. Everybody give D-Ray some love. It's been her birthday.
30 seconds.
Yay. Thank you.
Happy birthday.
All right, everybody. Robert, D-Ray, happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
There you go. Alex, D-Ray, happy birthday. Alex is like, I'm sitting up here trying to press these buttons and twist these knobs. I don't have time for that. But he does. He loves you. Happy birthday, girl.
Stand by, please.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show, talking with Dr. Max Wolf. You know what time it is on Thursday, every Thursday, and of course, Attorney Robert Patillo decided to stick around with us. Before we come to you, Dr. Wolf, I wanted to quickly bring in Mama D, who has been holding so patiently. Mama D, what's on your mind today?
Well, hallelujah, greetings. I think that Kennedy and Nixon debate showed a healthy-looking Kennedy and a frail-looking Nixon, and made all the difference. But you can't solve that problem with voter suppression and violating the First Amendment right of not only freedom of speech, but to address grievances, especially when I believe it was Williamson that was the only one that made reparations a priority. And that's important. But I think if the DNC does not retract that position, and they expect to have their convention in the city of Chicago, that they should be sued and a restraining order should be filed until they give the American people a voice that they deserve to have.
All right.
It's wrong what they're trying to do.
Well, I hear you, Mama D. I think everybody needs to be heard, and I think that people, even if we have not had incumbents debate before, I think it needs to change. It needs to start now. We used to have slavery. That ended. Things change. People if they want this big job.
Mr. Magoo, And that Mr. Magoo image that they have of President Biden is only going to grow when he is trying to duck and dodge and not face the reality of the candidate. They can't chart to change the American people like that. The Republicans will have a field day with this. So they just need to retract it or have their Democratic convention somewhere else, because we'll have a mess like we had in the 1960s if they don't. Because if they march, I'll be right with them, because we deserve a right to be heard.
I hear you. All right, everybody. So, well, I want to know what you're thinking. And, of course, next Thursday, May 4th, we are going to have a labor panel, the Chicago Federation of Labor, Meggitt Financial. They offer financial advice. They become financial consultants to people who are working class and people who are poor. I really like them. Smart Local 265. I said the Chicago Federation of Labor, the Roofers, Local 11, Cisco, Empowering Chicago. You don't want to miss it. We're going to be talking about these labor issues, which are going to be front and center in the 2024 campaign. That is Thursday, May 4th, 4 to 6 p.m. here on WCPT. What have the Republicans done? 217 to 215. Raise a thin margin. It turns out they want to cap fossil fuel friendly policies, restrict regulations, add work requirements for social problems. They also want to slash food assistance for more than 1 million low-income seniors, many of whom rely on governments to eat every single day. It's going to cut oversight of nursing homes, putting thousands of vulnerable senior citizens in harm's way. You just keep on going with this. The people who took the cuts are you and me, but not the billionaires. Oh, maybe it's an oversimplification, but help me to understand first of all, what is the debt ceiling? Why is this a political football? What are we looking at, Dr. Wolf? What is the debt ceiling? Why do we debate this every single year?
So just to give people a little perspective, there are rules about how much debt the U.S. government can incur, right? So at one point it was $10 trillion, and it was 15, and it was 18, and it was 20, and now it needs to go higher yet again. That's called debt ceiling, how much debt you can have. It doesn't really correspond to anything, because the U.S. government borrows in U.S. dollars, which it also creates. So the United States government's in a unique position. When you or I take on debt, unless we're a successful non-discovered counterfeiter, it's probably not money that we made ourselves. And if it is, don't raise your hand and tell everyone, because that's a substantive federal crime. Right? So the federal government is in a somewhat unusual circumstance, and that part of the federal government, the Federal Reserve System, prints money, not without limit. And if you create more money, there are other issues. But generally speaking, this is something that we comfortably did without debate 51 times, more than half by the Republican Party, who then discovered they could pretend they cared about the budget deficit and give talking points and do nightly news performance. Right? So this is the equivalent of an end zone dance. It has nothing to do with scoring. It has nothing to do with anything. It's in fairly poor taste, but it's good at getting attention. So you have two choices. You raise the debt ceiling, or you critically default as the federal government of the United States, creating a global cataclysmic depression. These guys will flirt with that for personal advantage. Right? So they will teeter-totter your life and mine and our jobs on the edge of the precipice to try to get 25 minutes of talk time on late night news. But they're probably not going to actually do that, because all the companies that long ago owned and bought them, whatever facade of independence, will not like this idea, because they will not like the idea of losing a lot of money. It's amazing that they let these guys play this game, but I guess it's because they assume they won't do it, right? So the debt ceiling is really a procedural, again, done dozens and dozens and dozens of times, that says, okay, we, the Congress of the United States, who lawfully and constitutionally have control over the purse strings, are authorizing greater indebtedness. You could think about it, it's a mediocre analogy, but maybe one people understand, which is a lot of people at some point, when they need a little extra money, if they can, will go to their credit card company and ask for a larger credit limit. Right? Okay, you used to say I couldn't owe you more than $5,000 at any time. I would like you to consider making that $8,000. The only thing is, in this case, they're applying to themselves to increase it. Right? And when people apply to themselves for permission to do things that they need and want to do, I'm sure you're on the edge of your seat now. Usually they say yes. And so this will also probably end that way. But what they are doing is showing that the U.S. government is so dysfunctional and its politicians are so disinterested in the common good that they will risk cataclysmic trouble. And in so doing, they weaken the U.S. economy and they raise the cost to the U.S. government of borrowing money. Because if they consider defaulting, what would happen if they don't raise the debt ceiling, then they're saying we are considering not paying back our debts. And if you wander into the bank a few times and mention to the folks in there that you're kind of annoyed by this mortgage and you're not quite sure you're going to pay it, although you have the money, yeah, and you will then come back into the bank and apply for another loan, you may be astonished to learn they have concerns about you. Right? And so this does weaken the U.S. It is a sort of theater of dysfunction, and it is a good chance to see how much more important these people think their career and getting on the late news is, as opposed to having any interest in executing the bare bones basics of their actual jobs. And that's the debt ceiling. And the most recent vote was just mostly could McCarthy show that he still runs this sort of gaggle of maniacs in there and get them to vote for something that everyone knows is dead on arrival. Because the Senate won't pass it and the president would veto it, and he barely got it through, so he's not going to override that veto. Right? But what this probably does is weaken the economy a bunch by having these projects, and then the Republicans can run on a weaker economy in the presidential election, I guess. And a whole lot of people in the House were able to say outlandish things that their primary voters want to hear, that if we were ever dumb enough to do, would cataclysmically damage the country.
What would happen if we go into default? I mean, just in real terms, how would that impact the average American?
So the dollar would tank, our currency would tank, right? And so everything we buy from the rest of the world, like all of our clothes and all of our cars and all of our computers and all of our electronics and a lot of our electricity, little stuff that you probably don't think about in your everyday life, would shoot up in price radically and rapidly, several percent a day for however long this lasted. Interest rates would spike here, so the cost of borrowing money would spike. The amount of money available to borrow would diminish rapidly and substantively, right? So you'd have a sort of less available credit at a higher cost, and you'd start to see all kinds of economic fallout. The stock market would tank, the bond market would tank, the housing market would tank. You'd have a sort of substantially more dramatic 2008, 2009 styles to fallout, and it would quickly turn global as global equity markets would sell off. Remember, the entire global financial structure is built relative to what's called the risk-free asset, the closest thing to a risk-free asset we have, which is the 10-year U.S. government treasury. So if your riskless asset, that is the cornerstone of a global financial system, were suddenly risky or in default, it would send all kinds of shockwaves. And ironically, U.S. government debt wouldn't do worse because people would run to the relative security of U.S. government debt, selling corporate debt, selling equities, dumping out of all kinds of things. It would be cataclysmic. And look, it is possible that a fair number of these people don't even know that, partially because they're not concerned to read anything or learn about it. And it is true that basic economics literacy is not required to be in Congress. So sometimes when these people talk about things without even any ideological dog in the fight, their baseline ignorance is sort of impressive. Like you'd fail an intro econ course with that understanding. But some of them really don't know anything about the economy. I mean, some of these people don't seem to know where their feet are. But leave that aside, they also don't seem to know that much about macroeconomics all the time.
I mean, politically, Robert Patillo, what is the fallout?
Well, I'm not quite sure if the Republicans are trying to reelect Biden or if they just really have some kind of masochistic wish. But this is a complete, just the proposed budget is a victory for Democrats. The fact that they did exactly what Democrats accused them of doing, and they put it down on paper. This is why McCarthy has been so vague about what the Republican proposal would be, because it's exactly what people thought. It's massive corporate bailouts, balancing the budget on the backs of the poorest people in the United States of America. And this will be part of every single Democratic campaign ad for the next 2 years or for the next 18 months until the 2024 election. And if we look at what the ramifications of this would be, it will be nothing short of World War III if the U.S. begins defaulting on its debt, because you'll start seeing the instability in the international markets. You will start seeing the countries that are already fleeing to the Chinese yuan start to expand. We're always seeing India, Brazil, the Middle East to start seeing the Saudi Arabia may start settling petrol transactions in the yuan. Once America loses its status as the world reserve currency, well, then that means that all bets are off. Even for the dollar is just one of many currencies that are that we're settling transactions on. That will mean finally this debt that we have becomes real, and people might actually want their money back from us, which will not go over well. So the fact that Republicans are willing to put the entire security of the globe in question just to score some petty political points or to make some concessions to the extreme MAGA wing of the party, I don't think that is a good place for them to be at going forward. And kind of just referencing back a coda to the previous conversation, this is part of the reason that discussion on whether or not President Biden is too old, I don't think will be that big of an issue, because if you look at the budget that Biden suggested versus the budget Republicans are pushing forward, it's very easy for his campaign to make the argument, well, regardless of how old I am, I'm not trying to steal food out of poor people's mouths in order to give tax cuts to millionaires and billionaires. And I think that's far more of a compelling and interesting and important message for most voters than whether or not President Biden gets lost on stage or whether or not he can tell a story.
I mean, where do you see
great leadership? With great challenges come great leadership. Thank God. Thank God for the leadership we have right now.
But what was his point? What was McCarthy's point? In pushing this vote through. I mean, what is the point?
I think everyone's lost in their own thing here. I think McCarthy's not sure, and neither is anyone else, if he can herd those cats. And to be fair, he's a lot more reasonable than plenty of the voices, right? And no one has any shame. You got George Santos out there, or whatever his name is, looking for re-election and worried about life being too easy on welfare. I mean, at least unlike some of these people, as a professional grifter who probably was on various government assistance recently, he might have some experience with it, but a moral lesson from him is a stretch. You have Matt Gaetz in Florida, who's worried that if people get food stamps, they won't let their daughters in high school go on dates with him, or whatever his motivation is. And he's worried about this too. So it's a free-for-all, right? And I think that the Speaker of the House is charged with an impossibly difficult task, in fairness to him, which is to herd these cats. And he's just trying to, half of this is to say there is a functioning Republican Party, because the head of it isn't sure, right? He isn't sure if he's the head of it. He isn't sure if it's functioning. And that we are true to our core principles of less cheese for poor people, more tax cuts, and don't worry, even though it doesn't make economic sense, if you're in a red state and you need important government subsidy, we now believe in that too, although we also believe in budget reductions. Right, so he's got a really tough job, in fairness to him. He didn't invent this stuff. He sort of walked into it. And he's trying to show that he's still in charge and he can bring the votes. And remember, there's a lot of arm twisting and a lot of work to get the razor thinnest of margins, a little bit like his actual speakership election, right?
Well, I mean, and he can face impeachment. He can face impeachment at any time over any little thing.
Who knows? His party right now, there's probably people who think they're the Speaker of the House, and they're not even in Congress.
And I think that might be the biggest part of this entire thing for McCarthy, which is this budget was absolutely meant to appeal directly to those MAGA extreme far right-wing voices that caused his speakership to go to a 15th round of voting. This is exactly what that wing of the party wanted to put out there. That's why this vote was so razor thin, because McCarthy is shown time and time again he does not have the ability to or the stomach to stand up to the Marjorie Taylor Greens, the Lauren Boeberts, the Louis Gohmers, the extreme far right wing of the party, and these are the sorts of things that are great for them and their MAGA base and their secure districts, but terrible for the rest of the Republican Party. If you are in a swing district, if you're in a district that, or if you're a blue state Republican who's in a tight race, imagine what this will do. So effectively, McCarthy may have torpedoed any opportunity of Republicans trying to keep a majority in 2024 because they are doing exactly what Democrats said they would do. Tax cuts for the millionaires and billionaires, unlimited military spending, taking food and sandwiches out the mouths of poor people. This is, as I said, if this was a Biden re-election ad, well, we would say it was absurd, but this is legitimately what the Republican Party platform is.
Well, I mean, and I'm wondering if the Democrats are going to use this because the Republicans walked right into this. I mean, Max. I mean, look at these cuts. Taking food off the tables of seniors. I mean, are you serious?
But they're also able. I mean, there is a little bit more wisdom to it than that because they are able to be utterly assured that they don't actually get these cuts. This is the game, right? So they get to go to their conservative base in the primaries and say, "We tried to fight the good fight. We tried to get rid of these things," which there's support for in the. It's probably enough in the Republican primary in a lot of jurisdictions that those are popular suggestions, right? But not actually run the risk of implementing it, right? Which is an old trick. You put up something absurd, which would be catastrophic if it happened, and then it doesn't happen, so you don't have to live with the consequences. And then you tell your people, "Hey, we tried." No, both parties play versions of this. It's not just Republicans who do that, but this is their version of it. So there was no chance. Right? And in fact, they probably only got the votes they got because people knew it was dead. Because it was very clear that it would never survive the Senate, and it would never, ever be signed into law by President Biden, who already basically came out and said, "I will veto this if you deliver it to me." And it was very clear that it wasn't viable in the Senate. So it was sort of double assured never to see the light of day. And it is hard, given the disinterest and disengagement of the American public, to run that much on an unsuccessful proposition, right? Now, on an individual race, yes, you're probably right. You can say, "Hey, this guy wanted to do this or that, but it was defeated." Once it's defeated, it sort of loses much of its zing, right? And then the truth is the other guy can just deny that he voted for it because that's become popular, and the public just thinks, "Well, I hate it when they bicker," So basically, the way that public responds to things like this deeply promotes the value of lying. I don't know if this crowd needs a lot of inducement in that direction, but they will be well rewarded for telling fictional stories, and the interest level is low. It's a little bit the way the sort of reproductive rights look like they may collapse for millions and millions and millions of Americans, and millions more than think so, because everyone thinks their state can rescue them, even though the Supreme Court looks like it's pretty interested in overriding the states on all kinds of freedoms. Right? People need to pay enough attention to understand where they're at and what's going on, and they need to pay consistent attention. I know it's hard, and life is full, and jobs are demanding, and so are families and whatever else. But, yeah, I mean, it is hard to motivate a large number of people. And in terms of where the popularity is, and that can ebb and flow, whenever you have a two-party system, both candidates are viable, no matter how inviable they were. And I think 2016 taught us all a pretty hard lesson in that, one. And two, I think the other thing people tend to forget in America is that a lot of elections are won and lost simply on turnout, particularly if you're a Republican, where you get millions and millions of less votes in every congressional cycle, every Senate cycle, every presidential cycle, but you often still get to take the office. And that's about who shows up where. And so these have become games of turnout. And games of turnout, fickle opinion of marginally interested parties is notoriously difficult to forecast, particularly in advance. Right? So it is tricky. Right?
It is. I mean, it is tricky, but I mean, I don't know. I guess I just don't know where this is going. And I want to know, just given all those people have got to know that going into default would completely upend the world economic system. And I'm not saying that there should not be fundamental changes, but folks, you won't eat. So, I mean, where do we go from here? I've got 2 minutes.
You have a hard time. Yeah, if you have a hard time getting along with a loved one, the solution is probably not for them to be hit by a truck and wake up a different person, right? Like you have to do the slow work to get to the better place a different way, right? So yeah, whatever issues any of us do or don't have with the national economic system or the global economic system, a default, especially a self-inflicted wound of that profound nature, would be terrible for humanity at large, but particularly terrible for the U.S. It would be a sort of super version of the Trump years, right? So Trump accomplished 30 or 40 years of American decline in 4 years, which is why he's beloved by our enemies and adversaries to this day, right? This would be something even more concentrated, right? And I would also just remind people that in all things, lethality is dosage.
And just real quick, I think that that's something we have to remember is that President Biden's doing something unprecedented, which is not negotiating with the GOP on this. He's basically saying, your budget is so extreme, I don't even have to come to the middle with you. And this is probably the first time we've seen a president try this technique. It's going to be interesting to see if Republicans blink at the last moment. Janet Yellen putting in every policy she can to extend the period of time until default, but we might see ourselves in a Greece 2010 Sri Lanka type situation, and that is not positive for anything on the global stage.
Boy, talk about being the laughingstock and people starving. It's ridiculous. Everybody, just keep. What would you ask us to do, Max Wolf? I've got 1 minute left. I mean, we should call our representatives and say what?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a little bit. There's an analogy here. People who don't like the conditions of their job or are trying to appeal to the special interests that fund them need to have some limit on that. That limit has to be doing elective existential harm to their constituents. There is no constituent, or very few, in the United States who wouldn't be meaningfully and rapidly harmed by this. Right? So what they're basically saying is, I am holding you hostage for something I want. If you don't like being held hostage by someone who you've entrusted to be your leader, then you should be highly displeased with the people playing this game. And the other thing I'd say is, whatever your thoughts on any of these issues, this is not the way to accomplish them. Very few people want that, right? You want a better price on a used car, you don't abduct the family members of the seller of the vehicle, right? There has to be a better way to negotiate whatever you think of the demand list here.
Amen, amen, and amen. This is not a game. This is not a game. These people are playing a game on us, but this is not a game. This is not. I don't know about you, but my parents are seniors. Taking food off of anyone's table, I think is cruel. Denying people food, it's cruel. What they are putting forth is cruel. These cuts are extreme. They're harmful, and just the fact that they would put them out there, even as the president seeks to veto them. God bless them. God bless you, everybody. Have a great one. So, boy, I'm so tired of these folks and these games that they are playing here. It's just ridiculous. But
it sort of reminds me of those things where, that I think Newt Gingrich kind of pioneered 20 years ago, where he would hold up these debates, and he would have these raucous, intense debates right in front of the camera for C-SPAN in an absolutely empty room about nothing.
Oh, yeah.
But then he made his highlight reel, and he could push them to the local news in Georgia or wherever, and it turned out to be kind of smart, right? So it made him appear to be a national figure. Oh, and then he eventually was able to parlay that into being a very powerful national figure, right?
Yeah, but it's so ugly and it's so mean.
Yeah.
I mean, I just that's what's so stunning to me. I mean, how can you put pen to paper and think that this is okay? This is crazy.
Remember, this is a group of people though who, yeah.
No, Dr. Wolf, you and then you, Robert. Okay. Robert?
Yeah, this is a group of people who want to force you to have a baby and then not give you any child care or days off to care for your kid. They're sick. It's a group of people who don't want to give veterans hurt by the conduct of their defending the country in the Middle East or, with Gulf War syndrome or other various issues, don't want to pay them proper benefits and give our veterans proper care. It's a group of people who don't want to adequately fund the schools. It's a group of people who want to throw people off emergency medical assistance and deny them health insurance and deny them food stamps. So, I mean, not to be too sort of jaundiced here, but this does not seem out of character, unfortunately.
No, it's not out of character. It's just it's out of bounds. And at some point, we ought to be tired of having people play with us this way. This is
For sure.
this is awful. I mean, and as people are losing, the American dollar is losing faith and credit. I mean, that's real. I talk to people all over the world all the time. De-dollarization is real. Argentina just decided, okay, when we trade with China, we'll trade in the yuan. I mean, this is happening all over the place. I mean, and it's going to, and Dr. King foresaw this 50 plus years ago, Max, and Robert. He said there will be a little nation that will rise up that won't even know your name. Your hubris, America, is going to get you in trouble, and that's what we're seeing. You travel all around the world, as do both of you do. You see the infrastructure of other countries, and you know America is struggling. We don't have time for these kind of foolish games. Nobody has time for this.
No, I mean, look, American companies are voting with their feet all the time. We don't discuss it, but they vote with their feet too. Where to produce, where to do research and development, where they think their future is largely focused, right? Mm-hmm. And part of the problem is there is an element, a non-trivial element, in one of our two major parties that is a death cult, that is literally at war with the present time and the future, right? And that can be very destructive, but it's really hard to turn back those hands of the clock. And so there's very little chance of success. Not that I would hope them success, but very little chance of success and a lot of destruction. And that's part of what this is about, right? This is part of about who gets to make what choice. But this is so, again, probably not the right place to focus, but radically poorly thought through. It's so self-referential, right? This is literally the guy dressed up as Boy George at a dinner party, a black tie affair, right? Like, okay, I guess it looks great in your selfie, but holy crap, right? Like, what's the decision process?
Oh, no, you know, I love Boy
And
George.
I think we can't underestimate the ability of quote unquote, I don't know why we call them conservative, but conservative voters to vote against their enlightened self-interest. I found myself in a weird Twitter rabbit hole yesterday. You go through the trending topic tags and you see what's going on the latest. And so there were a group of porn stars for Trump having a discussion on Twitter. So I find myself reading through this, and in my mind, I'm trying to wrap my head around how can women who literally have to have sex as part of their career be in favor of a party that's against reproductive health, and a party is trying to strip birth control, and a party is trying to strip away the ability for bodily autonomy. How can you put those two things together? And when you start reading through, you realize that these people are not voting on policy. They're not even voting on objective reality. They are voting on the culture war. They're voting on the aspects of Trumpism that tell them that they're a patriot, that tell them that, you are seen, you are heard, you are believed. And this is a very dangerous element of the American political sphere because these people don't think about the long-term consequences and ramifications that their support will have for these organizations. All they hear is that there's somebody they feel like is standing up. And as Donald Trump said, they love low intelligence voters. Very few candidates will say that out loud and still keep the support of low intelligence voters. But these low intelligence voters they want somebody that they feel respects them, that views them as being equal. That's why they're always talking about the corporate elites. Literally, Donald Trump will sit in a gold-plated golf resort in Florida talking about the elites and how they're trying to keep down the common man. And these folks can't put that together because they are so caught up in this cult of personality that they've forgotten objective reality. And that is what Republicans are depending on. They're depending on voters looking at their cuts to social services that will hurt and impact them directly. If you're in rural America, if you're impoverished, if you're a part of one of these dying communities in the Rust Belt, you are going to be negatively impacted by this by this budget that Kevin McCarthy has put forward. But as long as they can keep in your mind that you're fighting against socialism, you're fighting against Marxism, you're fighting against Elon Omar and the Squad, you're against the Green New Deal or whatever new boogeyman they put out there, you're against critical race theory, this is going to stop transgenders from playing girls' sports, this is going to stop drag queens from reading to your children, those sorts of things, they can convince these individuals to line up behind something that will literally take food off of their table. That goes back to my favorite quote from Voltaire: if a man can convince you of absurdities, they can push you towards atrocities. And that's what we're seeing in American real politics.
Well, this is where we are.
I mean, we know it's pretty crazy because we hear all this stuff about how everyone's a child molester, right? And that's why I don't want my kid to be read to by a trans person or drag, whatever the sort of story is. And then there's a steady drumbeat right behind this of Republican conservative church activists getting arrested for shocking acts of serial pedophilia. And a fair number of the folks up there screaming and yelling about protecting the children turn out to be having all kinds of inappropriate interactions with these kids. These guardians of chastity don't have a good track record. Right? So this whole thing is about who do you get to hate? It's about license to hate, right? And that's much more important than any us pointing fingers, however accurate some of the stories might be, is we have a country where a lot of people are suffering enough that that's all they need. They just need a little nudge and say, you hate this person. You attack that person. Mm-hmm. Your problems, your sadness, your isolation, your poverty, your alienation from your community or your family, if it's church or whatever it is, it's the secret handiwork of the Jew space laser or the drag queen, library reading hour, right? But all judgments aside, you have to be in a pretty hard place to find that as a rope out of the dark. That's probably the real story here, right? Like, how did that many people get into such extreme need? And why is only people who want to march them into cannon fodder scenarios, why is that the only voice they can find? It's a version of why is it so easy to get a gun and not mental health care? Why is it so easy to find someone who hates you and so hard to find someone to help you? Those are really structural social issues, right? And those are probably what has to be solved to solve these problems. These problems are symptoms, however aggressive, right? However aggressive and possibly all-consuming sometimes. They are symptoms of something underlying, right? They are not the underlying cause. They are the symptoms of the cause. I've gotten in trouble for this analogy before, but as a symptom, they are aggressive. It's like bleeding from the eyes or something. You get a symptom like that, it's hard for me to refocus on, gee, there must be an underlying cause. Because there's a sort of like, oh my God, this guy's bleeding from the eye feature. But these are symptoms. They are not causes, right? And there's probably a better path to some compassion for the causes because, I mean, unless you're just flagrantly and wildly mentally ill and aggressive, which is not going to be everyone here, right? You got to be in a really hard situation to be working so hard against your self-interest and full of so much animosity toward what are largely imaginary and bizarre straw dogs, right? I mean, most people would be pretty darn excited if anyone wanted to get all dressed up in a costume and read to their kids. I don't think they'd be that hung up on what the costume was, whether it's Peter Pan or Wendy. If someone wants to come and read to your kids, that's pretty cool because very few of us have that much time to do that, right? And yeah, some of them might be up to something terrible, but if the biggest problem you can imagine in your world is a slightly different history of the civil rights movement and its implications for how different races are treated in the U.S., really? That's your thing? Or who might be reading 14 seconds a year at the local library to a bunch of kids who went there after school instead of the usual sitting around the house watching hardcore porn and taking some of mom and dad's fentanyl? Seriously? That's what you're worried about?
Yeah, but because some people are worried about it, though, and I will say this.
Yeah.
We've got to have the conversations about that. Because some people, there's something that we used to have that we really don't have anymore because we expose children to all kinds of things. Grown folks' conversations. We don't have those anymore. We just let it all hang out before children, before they are ready and able to process the information. I didn't hear about the birds and the bees until my mother, I can see now, saw me beginning to develop, and she saw that the time was approaching that she needed to let me know some things because I developed a little early. And they were very, very gentle. We don't do that now. We just politicize everything instead of giving parents choice and make a decision about how they want to raise their children. That for me is a problem. But we've created an environment in which we can't even have that conversation, talking with. We don't even want to converse anymore. We just want to preach to people and be done with it. That's not right. It's just not right. It's also not right to vilify and bully people. That's wrong, too. I mean, come on, everybody. But we need to respect where people are coming from. If I don't want you reading to my child, I have my own reasons, and okay, and I'll respect that. And I'll just keep on going with that. You know,
I think the big, for me, I think the bigger issue is that it's not based on anything. We have a lot of problems that are based on things. For example, the chances of your child being molested by a blonde-haired, blue-eyed, white gym teacher are far higher than them being molested by a drag queen, and then we never had a case of that happening. It would be a case in the news of the alternative. So we ignore real issues because we're running after fake issues. Way higher chance of your kid being molested by a Boy Scout troop leader because they just had to have a big settlement on that. Thousands of children who were abused. Southern Baptist Church had to give release the names of hundreds of clergy members that had been molesting children. That falls. So we're ignoring these actual issues where there are actual victims and there's actual harm that's taking place because a political movement has figured out a way to convince people that there is this new other and that other is a threat. And this is fundamental to all fascist movements. If you look at the symbol of the fascista, it is all the tools that are needed for an executioner to punish people. It's the rods, it's the sticks, it's the axe. It's all about otherizing other groups. And this is how fascists are always able to rise to power. First, you say, well, that other group over there is slightly different from you, and that other group that's slightly different from you is the one that's causing all your problems. We have this great and glorious past that once existed, and we can return to it if we can just get rid of these others who are trying to change the way that things are. And once you're able to otherize, once you're able to separate people, once you're able to blame other groups for all your problems, well, then now you have Kristallnacht. Now you have, the Armenian genocide. Now you have building a border wall between people. Think about the fact that this country, they've convinced poor people that somebody walking 1,000 miles from Guatemala is the reason that you don't have money, as opposed to the giant corporation with private jets that's been screwing you over for the last 40 years. And guess what? If your friend didn't walk all the way here from Guatemala to work in some of these subhuman conditions on American farms, that avocado that you're eating right now that costs $2 that you're complaining about will probably be $20 or $25 if we had to depend on American labor to do it. So when we start losing the reality of situations and we start allowing these boogeymen to kind of metastasize and proliferate in American politics, that is how you get on the super highway to Giorgia Meloni in Italy. That's how you end up with a Viktor Orban. That's how you end up with Lukashenko. That's how you end up with Erdogan. This is how you end up with the genocide we're seeing in the Tigray rebellion in Ethiopia. This is how you end up with the warring factions that we're seeing right now in Sudan. Because once you are able to convince people that the other group is the reason for all their problems, as opposed to the actual major international actors that are creating them, well, now you create a place where you can convince these people to now become armed, and now the only way to maintain your way of life is to get rid of these other people. Well, now you're in a full-blown civil war.
Well, whenever you want to get rid of people, that's always a problem. But whenever you don't want to have conversations about people and their reservations, that's a problem too. And I think that what we've got to do is, like I said, grown folks' conversations, and grown folks need to converse instead of shooting at each other, which is what we've come down. That's not even what we've come down to. That's the history in this country. Hello, can you say lynching? This is what we do here. This is how we get down in America. What Violent as hell. That's just the reality. Now the question is, where do we go from here? Chaos or community? Dr. King asked that question more than 50 years ago. What are we going to do now? What are we going to do now? There's some things, I'll be honest with you, as children, I would not want my nieces and nephews to see until I could help them to process these things, these issues, because they're under my charge and they're under my responsibility. I don't want to leave that to the public square to explain certain things to the young people who I got to help to raise. I don't want to do that. And that does not make me a bigot. It does not make me a bully. And what we need to do is stop doing that and start talking with each other. We're all in this same boat called the earth, okay? We all here together. And we have to figure out how we can love one another. Hello? No, the Bible never told you needed to like people, but you do need to love. And when you love people, you kind of not just tolerate them, you give them space. How about that? But again, I pivot back to grown folks' conversations. And about some things that grown people, conversations they need to have with each other, and then I need to have it with my own children. And one of the things that you got to teach your children to do is how to treat people. Coming up in the church, I grew up around everybody, y'all. Okay? Now, my mother wasn't going to let me be around everything. That's why she wouldn't let me be in a choir. She said, no, little people get a little too free in these choirs, and I don't like that. So what I'm going to do is, okay, you got a lovely voice, that's nice. When you're old enough to handle this, then you can get in a choir. I'm not going to let you go but so far in it. Because there are some things that you will see that to me are inappropriate at your age, even at 18. But by the time you got to college, okay, there were some things that I had enough time with you one-on-one for you to handle these things. I'm just saying we've got to have some conversations and we need to stop just dropping kids and you need to raise them. Spend time with them. Invest in them. I promise you, what you put in, you will see come out as they get older. You've got to do all those things.
But to be fair to people too, right? You got to give people a few days off from work. They have to earn enough in 8 or 10 hours at work to float that household, because otherwise they can be that better parent on the street.
Absolutely, but you know what I'm saying? But that's why the way the society is structured, it's anti-family, it's anti-life. You shouldn't have to work 60, 70, 80 hours a week. You can't spend any time with your children. You have to give them to somebody else. I don't agree with that. And we need to support, while we're sitting around here, I want women to have their reproductive rights. But I also want a woman to have the right to have a baby and get the support that she needs, should she choose to do that too. We're not even having that conversation.
Yeah, for a country this wealthy, it's amazing that we support kids so much less well than other countries that don't talk about how much they love kids all the time.
Because we're anti-life.
I mean, I got a young kid, and I see the tears holding back. I see the agony in the faces of young moms, particularly moms doing it alone, which is pretty common these days. But dad's doing it alone because that happens too, or moms and dads doing it, who just cannot possibly earn enough money without spending all their time at work, and then also coming home so exhausted and frustrated that it's hard to be the parent they could be, that they want to be, and that kid or those kids need, right? That's right. It is a bigger issue, right? And even though it's really lame and she took a lot of hit for it, like, that comment always resonated with me, especially once I had a kid, that it really does take a little bit. It does take a village to raise a kid. It really does.
That's an old African proverb. It's true.
Yeah.
I know a village raised me and my brothers and my sister. That's the way it works. Because we're all part of a village. You don't raise your child in a vacuum. You can't. And that's what I'm saying. As much as I support reproductive rights, I also support the right to a person. Really, if you really believe in life, you are going to feed the mother adequately give her prenatal care. You're going to give her postnatal care. You're not going to kick her out the hospital after a day, when her afterbirth might still be inside of her, killing her. We have the highest maternal mortality rate in the Western world, in the so-called developed world. Are you serious? We're not pro-life. We're not pro-family. Someone needs to take the time off to take care of their child, because their child might be, first of all, you might just say, I don't have the money to get my child, to save my child's life. That is sick and deranged. Our values are off here. And unless we have those conversations, all other conversations are nullified, in my opinion.
And look at the C-sections. This is what to give those C-sections, and we somehow have classified this as a minor operation, where anything else, even half as big, an abdominal operation of that profound invasiveness, would come with a whole lot more aftercare, a whole lot more recuperative time, a whole lot more discussion, right? But they sort of pass it all off as this quasi-natural process, so it's no big deal, and your body was made to do this. And
oh, no. This is the way they treated black women in slavery. Black women had babies out in the fields, and they put them back out there the next day, if not later on in the day. We've seen this before. That's why people need to know their history. You want to play on CRT, to do whatever it is that you want to do. I know what they did to black people here. I know what they've done to indigenous people. And unless we learn the lessons from that, we're going to continue to go down this hellhole that we are in. Women are at risk of losing their lives when they have babies in the United States. That is ridiculous. We cannot get decent housing in the United States. That is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. I'm sorry. No, I'm not sorry. I didn't want to speak over you. Yes?
No, there's nothing to be sorry, but this is what I mean by cognitive dissonance as it exists in our political system, mainly pushed by the mainstream media. Because if you think about the weight of the problems that we have in this country versus the amount of time that's dictated to them. So we can talk about maternal mortality. We can talk about child poverty. We can talk about a lack of access to health care. But the mainstream media will take that and give it less time than there's a Bud Light can that has a man in a dress on it. And now that's getting 16 hours of airtime, and then about 5 minutes of airtime and a bunch of women died during childbirth today. And this is the problem for our political system, that we exist in a place where they've been able to manipulate public opinion and manipulate public thought by giving more weight, more credence to completely pointless culture war issues, and that's exactly where Republicans are depending on their voters coming from. This is why they've now switched over. They're no longer the George Will, Bill Kristol, egghead parties that they used to be. You're no longer seeing the guy in the bow tie and the Coke bottle glasses, breaking down the financial documents or what something's going to do to the debt ceiling. It's now turned into a monster truck rally parading of the political party, and that's a very difficult thing to overcome.
But they were extreme then. No one was more extreme than George Will. It's just they look less extreme today. But they were the oppositional forces against the civil rights movement. Let's be clear, which you are.
Exactly.
But even as we have the trans discussion, and I'm eager to have that one day, but I want to get the right people so that we can have the right kind of discussion. There have been women who have been born biologically female who have been attacked talking about women's issues. And that for me is a problem. Because unless you come into the conversation or coming into womanhood talking about the wealth gap, if you're not talking about the fact that black women are more likely to die of breast cancer than anybody else, unless you're willing to talk about what it takes to have a baby, whether you can have a baby or not, then you've missed what women have to deal with. Women have to deal with much more than makeup and looking cute. That ain't, Fannie Lou Hamer didn't wear a stitch of makeup. I don't even know what dress she wore, but she was all woman all day. And I need to have those discussions, and women need to direct that. Because I'm tired of men directing that trans discussion also. I'm tired of that. I've seen my mother be disrespected because she's a stay-at-home mom, as if she just stayed home and filed her nails. That's problematic for me. Problematic. And I repeat, if you're not going to talk to me, milk doesn't cost less for me, a mortgage doesn't cost less for me. And unless you're going to talk to me unless you're going to join me in that struggle, black women have to work almost a year. You have to add 10.5 months to my work schedule. I have to work 10.5 months more than a white man has to in order to make the same salary that he makes, and I've got the same qualifications. That's a problem for me. Indigenous women have to work a year. Hispanic women have to work a year. You don't want to talk about that? Then you have nothing to discuss with me. You don't want to talk to me about the fact that these medicines that they use to treat breast cancer don't work on African descended women? Then you can't talk to me. Most women in the world still need a man to co-sign on her bank account. If you don't want to talk about that, then you don't have anything to say to me. That's what being a woman is about. Being a woman is about having to come out the hospital a day or two, maybe a day and 36 hours after she's had a baby. Afterbirth may or may not be in her. That will kill her. Mifepristone, you want to know what it does? It helps to resolve miscarriages. If you don't properly resolve a miscarriage, more than likely the woman will die. Now, if you want to join me in womanhood, okay, come on. That's where womanhood is. That's where it's at. The wealth gap is where it's at for me. If you don't want to talk about that, then hush your mouth. You have nothing to say to me. And I mean that. I mean it.
I would also like to demand an apology for monster truck rallies.
You know what? I can't. This man doesn't make any sense. This man, I love him.
As a monster truck aficionado, one of the few here in Brooklyn, I took something up. I don't have a motor vehicle, but if I did, it would be a monster truck.
Now you see why he has to be back on your show. Because he has time enough for your audience, Robert Patillo. Because all y'all crazy.
Absolutely.
I'm okay. I don't know, in the spirit of what you just said about the trans debate, I'm not sure that I can accurately represent the monster truck community at this time.
No. Trust and believe. Max will say things that will get him chased out of the 92nd Street Y. Remember that, Max? It's like, I don't know if I should have said that. I'm like, yeah, you were very honest, but I don't know if that was the place for you to be so honest.
Like the right moment. It just seems like the right moment. I mean, also, we were having this debate, at the university, because we also had sensitivity training stuff. So, yeah.
I love
Max.
They
asked us all if we were racist for context, and it seemed like it was serious people, and they had done a lot of work, and it was an interesting conversation. And I said, probably, yeah. I think that's the point, right? If you grow up in a racist society and you have an education and institutions that have exclusion and racial bias histories, and you're American and you're white, you're probably somewhat racist. I don't think I am a racist, but I think I no doubt harbor some bias. I don't think there was anyone on the panel that didn't. That was also a well-received comment. But, yeah, I wasn't trying to accuse myself or others, by the way. It was probably a bad choice of phrase. But I don't think I was wrong.
I just want you to know that this lovely man called me as he was walking out of the building hurriedly. He said, I don't know if
pitchforks and bonfires.
Did I say the right thing? I said, what did you say, Max? Give me some context. Well, let me tell you what happened. I said, Max, I have to tell you, after I finished talking to you, I called my mother, and she said, Lord, is he... Good Lord.
Some people did appreciate the comment. It wasn't universally reviled. But yes, it was probably not a good idea. I was a little surprised because I had this image in my head of everyone saying, yeah, they're all probably racist. And then, never go first, right? This is like if you think you can fly, take off from the ground.
Oh.
But, yes.
I just said, Lord have mercy. I said, did you really say that, Max? Yeah, but I thought, no, that was a problem you were thinking. Oh, my gosh.
I don't think it's true, though. I mean, I can't see accuracy, but yeah.
No, you were right. I just said, Lord have mercy. You were right, but you were damned right. And I was like, oh my gosh, what's he doing?
I wasn't a campaign stop or anything, This was like, they were asking us, I think, in the context of being professors, right?
Like, how far away are you from the building? How far away are you from the crowd, please?
No one threatened me. I mean, I guess we got...
I'm having fun with you.
We're not.
But
yeah, no one called looking to book me either immediately after this one. But yeah, no one threatened me. You know, to be fair, I don't want to cast unfair aspersions on the crowd.
no, I'm not going to. I'm not.
Yeah.
I just
the
thought
why
it was,
up there is that raucous.
it was one of the funniest moments I've had. I said, boy, he does not stop. He's just going to be honest. Oh.
Well, I was actually prepared to do the full thing. I'm sure that I'm also homophobic and sexist.
Oh, God.
It's something for everyone in the audience.
Well, you know, well, clearly with the rant I just had, I get it, you know. But I don't believe in hurting anyone. I believe in embracing people. But I certainly, as I try to think deeply, and look at, you know, and look at where the conversations certainly need. Well, at least let me put my little 2 cents in. You know, I know you need billions, but you know, I got a cent or two. Let me put it in there. But this conversation is, you know, it's very one-sided. Many of them are. You know, there are acceptable answers and there are unacceptable answers. And, you know, and there's nothing that anyone can do or be with nothing. No one gets any credit for being honest, for being somewhere along the way on the journey, trying to figure things out. And that for me is problematic. But I must tell you, you know, as we're having these gender discussions, you know, I think that we have to be very, very honest and, you know, and look at people's all of their backgrounds. I come from the church. I come from a very embracing view of God, because God made everybody. And as my father would say, you don't know what has been poured into someone that makes them who they are. Whether it's genetic, social, cultural, you don't know what it is. And you don't know how people interpret what's been poured into them. First thing you've got to do is love somebody. And that's what was pounded into me as a child. Love, 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 love. And that's what I do. And with that came respect and appreciation. And I don't see that in all of these conversations. You either fall on one side or you're canceled. And I think that is ridiculous. And it's you can't be mature and have that you cannot be mature and have these conversations if we're going to cancel each other constantly. It's ridiculous. It's just ridiculous.
Well, I've always had this question when because I have a lot of trans friends, you know, being in Atlanta, it's just kind of part of the culture. I always have like, when has this ever been like an actual one-on-one issue for people? That, you know, you're trying to talk to trans individuals and then like some trans person just starts yelling at you and pushing you out the room and saying that you're not allowed to have a conversation or you're being canceled, because I found them to be very open, very welcoming, very almost happy to talk about things, to explain things, to have the conversation. It seems that often we're talking about kind of as we were saying previously, the media portrayal or the social media portrayal of the discussion as opposed to the actuality of what happens when you just with somebody and have a conversation with them. Because believe it or not, everybody's already been in the bathroom for trans individual in their lifetime. You've had no idea because they usually don't walk in there yelling out that they're trans. Everybody has already probably had a trans person read a book to their children because, you know, you probably just didn't notice they were trans and they were already teaching. I think that the media has drummed this up into being a big controversy when in reality, 99.9% of trans people just want to live their lives, be left alone, pay their bills, love who they feel like loving, go to the grocery store, go to the gym, and go back home. There's not this big idea of them being this, you know, culture-changing activism that the right-wing media has suddenly decided that they are. You can go all the way back to Greco-Roman times. You're going to find men who like dressing up like women who like dressing up like men, and they were able to, you know, proceed with their lives as they saw fit. And I think that's very much a distraction from much of the macro discussions we have to have in American politics, because the American right wing has figured out that this will be the new boogeyman of this particular political season. You know, before it was anarchist, at some point in time it was Satanist, you know, Marxist, and now trans people are the kind of the focal point of right now. I've seen this argument be completely outstripped with compared to the number of people who have had one of these negative interactions in real life.
Well, I've seen it. I've seen people who've had negative interactions, and I've seen people become very aggressive. I've seen all of it, and it's okay with me. Just because you've been aggressive, or you might have an aggressive group, and because some of them are, that doesn't mean that they don't have a right to the tree of life. Because everybody's not just true. Some people want to be activists, and they want to be loud and proud, and I get that. Some people who gay like that, some people who straight like that, some people who fat. I mean, everybody has a whole way of approaching life, and I appreciate that. Because there's because I'm watching what happened to J.K. Rowling. I've seen how she's gotten shouted down, and I felt that was absolutely unwarranted, unkind. And as someone who's biologically female, who's born female, I'm like, no, I got a problem with the way you all are handling her. She's not a person who has a period. She's a woman. And I don't like people who come into this space who don't ask me what being a woman is about. Every big job that you have requires an apprenticeship, and I think that becoming a woman requires an apprenticeship too, and becoming a man requires an apprenticeship, because they're big jobs. And ain't nobody asking me what being a woman is about, and as a woman, what my issues are. I got a problem with that. You can't just walk into womanhood. It doesn't work like that. I didn't. I had to apprentice for this. People had to tell me what being a woman was about, and even now, I'm learning more about it every day. And people need to appreciate that, and people need to stop mansplaining womanhood to me. Yeah, I said it. Stop it. You don't explain womanhood to me, I explain it to you. And that's where I am with that piece. In the meantime, bullying someone, hurting someone, diminishing someone, taking away their humanity is out of bounds. You don't have the right to do that. And that comes from another place, and we just need to stop it. I grew up in the church, Robert. Do you think I haven't seen have you seen Aretha Franklin's Amazing Grace? Have you seen that movie? There were trans people all up in that choir. In fact, a member of the trans community came up and started directing. I grew up with that. Please. There's one great gospel singer who used to sing at Push every Saturday. I didn't really think about her because she was very, very masculine, but I didn't really think about that because she was just a great, great person, and my parents first introduced her to us as a great artist. Okay, so she walked around in, tailored men's suits and had the swag of a dude. Okay. I didn't even process that. That was just who she was. Next. When she came to our house, she brought her woman with her. Next. Nobody discussed it. We're having dinner. Couples night, come on. What? So if people want to be so narrow that they want to box people out, go for it. I ain't got time for that. None. But I don't want my voice drowned out. Because there's some real issues that women have, and if you want to come into the woman's space, you need to ask me what they are and work with me on them. Otherwise, you don't want to be here, you're playing. And I don't have time for that. Women.
To me, this moment might be about something else too, right? Which is we have made life so hard for people that they're trying to get so much done with so little help and so much uncertainty and chaos and demands in the economy that part of the coping mechanism that we found, the only ones we found, are the ones that don't cost anything. So you can be you, and that can be a little bit more broadly defined, which is probably for the best anyway. And we've tried to restrict some of these sort of old-fashioned ideas or limiting ideas about exactly who gets to call themselves a man or a woman or gay or straight or old or young or beautiful or whatever, right? And that's probably all for the best. But that's also the sort of coping mechanism you give people to some extent when you're not giving them much help in their everyday life. That's that other part of that debate, right? When you can't get a job, when you can't have rights at your job, when you can't get paid a living wage, when you don't have the benefits you need to have to take a day off to care for a sick relative or take a day off because you're sick, right? Or to take a little time to train yourself to get a better job or move up the sort of whatever mobility is offered in your job ladder, right? Those are the basics, right? When you have to really agonize about whether or not to go to the hospital or get an ambulance when you're having chest pains because you're not sure you can afford it and you don't want to have a financial heart attack, even if you're just having a panic attack. And you start to read the stories, and you start to see it in people's eyes, right? And the things we're not talking about, to Robert's good points, have become so big, right? Like, one of the most dangerous things a lot of people do is walk out of their house and go to the grocery store, go to church, go to school, right? Like, that's pretty crazy. One of the most stressful, difficult decisions people make is whether or not to seek medical care in an emergency. That's pretty crazy, right? One of the things a lot of people worry about is, can they afford to keep their housing? Or will they be impoverished by their housing? Right? And once those things become hard, I think, unfortunately, what sometimes might be occurring is that people don't have much place for anyone else. And they feel under the gun, and they feel judged, and they feel squeezed, and they feel stressed. And then their openness to the other discussions isn't what it could be because they're in a tough situation. We kind of all know that at the micro level, right? That if someone's in a really tough situation, they might be less open to things or more judgmental or more short with something than they would normally otherwise be just because the circumstances are tough, right? But I wonder if we may have not, without thinking it through much, arrived at a moment like that on a social level. And then some of the judgments about people and their lack of interest in things are not merited. They're really driven by the difficulty of the circumstance as much as anything else.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that empathy can go a long way. Empathy, understanding what someone else is going through, growing through, or just stuck in. That's the only thing that I'm saying here.
Yeah,
that's all, I mean, because there's too much in these conversations that are issues that are real that are being missed, and that are not welcome. I was speaking at a women's conference, and one of our trans sisters walked up to me and she thanked me for acknowledging her and for making her think about some issues that she hadn't thought about before. And I said, hey, I'm your sister, I'm your ally. You got me. But you need to listen to me. Because I've been living in this body, and I've been living with being the only girl in this particular class. Where you're just dealing with sexist slights, misogynistic slights. I need to talk to you about those microaggressions that I've had to deal with. Not to mention being a black woman. Oh, a black girl. Oh, please. And then to come and to get educated and to find out to get here and to find out that I'm losing millions of dollars because I'm a woman. By the time I move into retirement, because I haven't been paid. What? No. And you're not talking about that? And you want to talk about being a woman? No. I don't want to talk. I'll tell you. We can talk about what being a woman feels like. I can tell you what it is like. And I want room in that conversation for us to have that discussion. Otherwise, you're missing me.
And I apologize, but I have to jump off to another call.
I love you all.
Thank you for your time, and it was a pleasurable conversation and interesting. Always a learning opportunity, and look forward to catching up with you, Robert, as well.
And give Thea a kiss for me.
Yes, sir. I will. I will absolutely do so.
That's like she and I share a birthday. Boom.
Yeah, exact same one.
Same time. Born at the same time, too. How about that? I love you all. Robert, do you want to say anything else before we gotta go? All righty. Everybody love this part.
No, I think we're in a good place, and we'll pick the conversation back up on Sunday.
Absolutely. And I'm going to send you have Dr. Wolf's number, yes?
I do indeed.
Okay, fantastic. And I want to have a quick conversation with you about the email you sent. No names here.
Okay.
And then, so you can direct me, guide me, so that I can find out how to bring them in. Because are they here in Chicago, too?
Just give me a call to the show.
Okay, please. Give me like 5 minutes. I need to make a quick call because I'm running a little late to the doctor's office. So let me just get in this car, and I'll call you from the car in a few minutes.
No problem.
Okay, all right.